radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
All right. Welcome, Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. Yeah. Today's Tuesday, August 3rd, 2021. 216 days into the new year, only 149 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in the middle of nowhere. That's right, a total undisclosed location. But it is beautiful. I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the planet. I am your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? All right. Tonight, Mark Sims. Been waiting for this. Mark Sims is here. He's here for the first time. That's right. UFOs, contact ET, and the internet, social media. It's going down tonight and tomorrow night. Peter Robbins is here. He's back. That's right, Peter Robbins. Tomorrow night, Thursday night, is another Fader night with open lines all night. On tonight, but I posted up throughout social media today. Making contact. Extraterrestrials are here. Making Contact's coming up August 18th through the 22nd. I want you to visit makingcontact.com. The promo code for you is JimmySave100. I think it's all uppercase. You can try lowercase if it doesn't work. JimmySave100 uppercase. $100, courtesy of Mark Sims, because he's the man. So I want you to go and do that. I want you to pick up the vibe that is going on. And I want to thank Captain Ron, too, as well. I hope he's listening tonight. Captain Ron is amazing. And this virtual environment, we were talking about this last night with Whitley Strieber. He called it the island. Well, it is. It's an island, but it's this town. It's got everything there. You're going to create your own avatar that you can customize and do your own thing with. And head out, and you are going to go to the auditorium. You're going to go in and you're going to take a seat, and you're going to do this for 18th, 19th, 20th, 21st, 22nd. What? 5 days? 5 days. It's absolutely incredible. So we'll talk about all of that when Mark stops by at the bottom of the hour. It's going to be a great show tonight. Okay, so makingcontact.com. Okay, all right, we've got it up there in social media if you can't remember makingcontact.com. All right, follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. The Sandbox is hashtag F2B on Twitter. Hello to everybody on the Bunker Cam, KGRA, Facebook, YouTube, what is up. Just letting you know. All right. All right. Earlier tonight, I was on with Christina Gomez and Mysteries with a History. Yeah, it was great, man. Christina's got it going on. That's a great show, and I really appreciate what she is doing over there. But I just like hanging out, and it was part 3. Aliens and Intruders, I think is what it's called. And today we did the Tall Whites, the Nordics. Yeah, can you even say Tall Whites today in this PC world that we're in the UFO community? You guys know what I'm talking about. All right, hashtag F2B on Twitter is the sandbox. Hashtag F2BQ is Fade to Black Questions. Chat. This is a fully interactive show. All right, now let me, as I get things started, let me look at my gifts. You guys are the best. Oh, Land of the Lost, Slee Stacks. That's from Brian. Well done. Well done. They Live. Oh, this is great. Corey, you're too much, man. Olivia. Oh, I wanted to, I saw the Michael J. Fox earlier. I've been watching a few things right now, a few TV series. And one of the things that I'm watching is American Vandal. I just finished season 1. I've started season 2. It's a pretty good series. If you haven't seen it yet, I know it's for teenagers. I get that, but it's really cool. And so I'm enjoying American Vandal. But the other thing that I've been watching on Netflix, and I didn't watch it last year, but I've gone back and caught up. But the Movies That Made Us. And I went and watched the Back to the Future episode, right? I had to. And one of the things that I heard about and just forgot over the years, that the original Marty McFly was Eric Stoltz. And what they do, you need to go and watch it. I'm not a spoiler alert. I'm not going to give anything away, not too much. But what they do show in that episode, in the Movies That Made Us, the Back to the Future episode, is clips of Eric Stoltz. That's right. And I like Eric. He's great. He's amazing. But it wasn't right. And they went and they shot a bunch of the film with Eric Stoltz, and it just wasn't working. And they had to wiggle Michael J. Fox into the film, and then they had to go back and reshoot and do all of that. But same lines, it's the same script, and it's apples and oranges. And I can see why Eric just didn't work. But anyway, go and watch that. It's a trip. It's a trip. Go and check it out. The Movies That Made Us. And check out there's a bunch of good episodes there, but that Back to the Future is an eye-opener, so go and check it out. All right, let me get to the breaking news. Last, Nanorex LLC and Artemis Music Entertainment teamed up to beam a recording of composer Claude Debussy's piano masterpiece, Clair de Lune. That's right. They beamed it up to the International Space Station, and you're asking why? Why would they do that? Well, the two companies minted this version of Clair de Lune as a non-fungible token, making it the first music NFT to reach orbit. Debussy published Clair de Lune in 1905. The space-flown version was performed by Hong Kong-based pianist Wing Chong Kam, and that was recorded last month on July 19th. Now, what they're going to do with it from here, they're going to auction it off? I don't know. but it just went down. And I went and listened to the recording of Wing Chong Cam, and it's a pretty good version, by the way. All right, it was announced today. We saw this coming. Including all indoor restaurants, entertainment venues, and gyms, Mayor Bill de Blasio announced earlier today. The program, which de Blasio dubbed the key to the New York City Pass, makes New York the first major U.S. city to create such a mandate, and it will officially launch on August 16th. Incredible. Just when you thought it was over, COVID. Well, this news broke today. Are you sitting down? I'm not making this up. This sounds like The Onion. This sounds like a satire website. This sounds like a parody news story, but it is not. Because a wall of ice collapsed yesterday at the Titanic Museum attraction, injuring 3 visitors to the popular tourist spot in Tennessee's Smoky Mountains. The Pigeon Forge Fire Department, I've been to Pigeon Forge, by the way. The Pigeon Forge Fire Department arrived at the museum at 8:11 p.m. after getting a 911 call reporting a traumatic incident. The Titanic Museum attraction lets visitors stick their hands in 28-degree water to feel what the passengers experienced on the Titanic that fateful night. And it also features a large iceberg-shaped wall of ice that guests can touch. Somebody touched it too much. It sounds like parody, doesn't it? I'm not making it up. This is a press release. It happened yesterday. Look it up. Look it up. All right, let's get this show cracking. Happy birthday to today, the one and only Michael Ealy. Today is 48. Who's Michael Ealy? Well, I'm going to tell you who he is. He played Ricky Nash in Barbershop. James Hetfield today is 58. Tony Bennett today is, are you ready? 95 years old. And the Stray Cats bassist, the one and only Lee Rocker, today is 60. Our dead guy's birthday today is Morris B.B. Dickerson, 1949 to 2021. Morris was a founding member and bassist for War. He was with them during their height of success from 1969 to 1979. He wrote and played that solid bottom end to all of their hits, including Spill the Wine, The World is a Ghetto. He sang the lead vocals on that. Cisco Kid, Why Can't We Be Friends, Lowrider, and Summer. Incredible. Morris was on stage in London in 1970 when Jimi Hendrix joined War for what would end up being his last public performance. Jimi jammed for the last 30 minutes with Morris and War. Hendrix died the next day. Morris passed away peacefully at Long Beach, California Hospital on Friday, April 2nd, 2021, after a long, undisclosed illness. Happy birthday, Morris. Morris B.B. Dickerson. On this day in history, 1958, the world's first nuclear submarine, the Nautilus, travels nearly 1,000 miles under the Arctic ice cap to the geographic North Pole. Here's your fader fact. This is crazy, too. This is for everybody down under, and even downer under than that in New Zealand. The clearest lake in the world is the Blue Lake, located in Nelson, New Zealand. Visibility in the lake is up to 80 meters, meaning the water is considered as optically clear as distilled water. That's insane. And that is your fader fact. Tonight, very special guest Mark Sims is here. And not only is he here for the first time, he's an internet pioneer. He's been around since the beginning. And tonight we are going to talk about UFOs, contact, ET, and the internet and social media. So get ready for that. Mark will be with us at the bottom of the hour. Tomorrow night, Peter Robbins is back. Can't wait for this. Peter Robbins. Time for me to hit this River Moon coffee. rivermoonwellness.com. Oh, man. Fade to black blend. I like my coffee dark. I do. Man, I could have sang in War vocals. I could have been back there, Cisco Kid. I could have been that dude. Could have been that dude. Man, I listened to Summer today, speaking of War. Oh, man. It's just, I mean, not only does it take you back, but, to the old days. It does. It takes you to a place and time, and I get that. But that song should be played around the country the day schools let out. The day that summer, that is the official song of summer. They should call it Summer. Oh, they did. All right. War. Night. And I started to think about, I'm looking at Mark's history and what he has done. And it just took me back to a place, including listening to War today. But my history with the internet, it goes back a long way. And every step of it, from the very beginning, that's right. Now, this is where I'm going to separate my audience a little bit, because for most, and I'm just taking a wild guess here, but I would say that for most, their journey with the internet starts somewhere in the mid-2000s, and that's okay. That's fine. You can't change your age. It is what it is. But for me, the older crowd, for me, my journey started back when I had Lotus Mail. Now, some of you are going to go, yeah, I remember Lotus Mail. Most of you have no idea, because my first email account was for my job. That's right. Lotus Mail. And it was a big deal. Email. I'm learning what email, what it even is, right? It was that long ago. But before I just stray off on Lotus Mail and what a big deal that was, right around this time, 1994, early 95, 94, 95, the internet was a different place. And yeah, we talk about it now. We had dial-up modems and all of that stuff, and having to do things like unplug your home phone and then plug in your computer, right? And then eventually you went to Radio Shack and you got a double plug onto your thing. You could plug it both at the same time. But these were big deals. These were things that we had to overcome every single day. Right? But what I remember clearly was the new buzzword, an internet browser. Now, all of this today is just whatever. But back then, this was all new. And I remember when I first set up AOL. And at that time, AOL didn't have a browser. And you heard rumors. You had some geeky friend or whatever that would talk about the internet. You didn't get it. You didn't really understand the concept of what the internet was. AOL, you could install it, and back then AOL, it came on floppy disk. CDs hadn't happened yet. You would get AOL like on 10 disc. I'm not kidding. I'm not making any of this up. But anyway, I digress. I was trying to find a browser because AOL didn't have a browser, and I was desperately searching for anything UFO related. And you can type in UFO. They had their news. You could have your buddy list. But it was all so primitive. But it was fun. It was new and it was fresh. But I needed a real browser, and there were rumors out there that were going on. You couldn't, if you just had AOL and you didn't have the internet, you couldn't search browser. You couldn't install a browser into AOL, a separate internet account. And trust me, none of this was easy back then. And now you had to find an internet company, right? And you couldn't browse the internet for an internet company. You needed a browser. It was this crazy catch-22. But eventually, I got onto the real internet. I can't even remember the name of the company, but it was something like PacNet or PacWest. WestNet or something, whatever. But I was able to then download Mosaic. And to download Mosaic and to go through all of this stuff, you had to download it on like 5 floppy disks. And each one of those disks would pick up where the other one left off. And hopefully when you were done, and you had this other thing that you had to have like this joiner, so you put the 5 files in and then it would assemble the file, and hopefully that actually worked. But this was the drama that we had to go through back then. And then right after that, Netscape Navigator came out, and this is all 94, 95. Internet Explorer, and I had excuse me, I had all the browsers on at the same time. And I started to search UFOs. And each one of these search engines, they worked different. Each one of these browsers, they worked different. You would get different results. Slapped. But what I found out very early on back then was that the internet was a very small place. In 1995, you could virtually see all of the web, all of it, in a week. Right? And I'm not kidding. At least that's what it seemed like. Found Paranet, and it was a pretty cool place to go and hang out. But even there, you could read everything in just a few days. But I kept my search on every day. UFO into Netscape, into Mosaic, into, looking for something new. But this is the crazy part. And I know it may sound strange to hear now, today, but back then, the groups, the people, everybody was nice. For the most part, they were. Everybody was just asking questions and looking for answers. Not like today. It was, no. Everything today is everybody fighting, right? It's just one fight after another. Negativity. But not back then. It just felt different. But here's the other thing. Data started to show up. Different cases, new websites. And of course, but it seemed like every other day a new story was breaking. I'm not going to get into the details, but I was constantly looking for updates. One of the cool sources back then was rents.com. Yeah, I know it's a different story today, but back then, well, most of you have never even heard of Jeff Rents, but back then, there were very few sources for alternative news, and Rents, for a moment, was a place to go. All right, it's not that way today, but back then, right? And then, of course, there was UFOmind.com by Glenn Campbell. Not that Glenn Campbell, the Las Vegas Glenn Campbell. You can still type in UFOmind.com into your browser, and Glenn's site, his current site, it'll redirect you to there. But his site today reminds me of the old days. It's pretty awesome, right? It's just a bunch of links. It's pretty cool. It's totally old school. Chosen version of the original UFO Mind site. And yeah, it's cool. Broken links and all. But the point of all of this is, it's me, Jimmy Church in 1995. It was a different place. This was the world of UFOs, UFO Mind, Rents.com. And after searching the net, looking for updates on anything, you found out quickly that UFO Mind was the center of everything UFO. So you always kept gravitating back. The internet was small. You know, it was trippy. Images took forever to show up on your computer. They would just blip, 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 and you would have to wait in anticipation for this flying saucer to pop up, right? And the other thing is this. The browsers, and if you were searching, you had to have, this is crazy to think about today, especially the way that Google works. But back then, you had to type in exactly the website. You didn't get alternative searches. You didn't get suggested. You didn't get, you were searching for, no, and you get to click it. No. You had to type in exactly. And I thought to myself, somebody's got to come up with the UFO yellow pages. UFO. Website yellow pages. Right? It's totally backwards. But back then, there wasn't a choice. And I thought, man, what if there was just every website was in a yellow pages and you could look up what you're looking for, get the website, and then type it in. That was our world. It seemed so simple and easy. It was fun. But the world today is different. Mark Sims is our guest. We are going to talk about all of this. The world of UFOs, ET, contact, and the internet. Mark Sims is my guest. Stay right there. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. The end of the internet. I found the end of the internet a few times. I literally did. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. I'll be right back with Mark Sims right after this short break. Stay with us.
This is Nicole Church, daughter of you-know-who, and you're listening to Fade to Black on JimmyChurchRadio.com and the Game Changer Network.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio. Introducing the Game Changer blend from River Moon Coffee that delivers a customized blend made specifically for the Fadernauts. If the game is rigged, change the game. It's a bolder cup with some bite. Game Changer is the coffee of choice for those that prefer an organic dark roast that is slightly lighter and milder. Pecans and chocolate with a rich, balanced, full-bodied cup that is roasted to perfection for a great coffee to start your day, as an after-dinner coffee or anywhere in between. Artisan, small batch roasted to perfection. USDA certified organic, all River Moon coffee is freshly roasted and packaged in the USA. Just go to rivermooncoffee.com or click on the banners over on our site and use the promo code F2B Blend for 15% off of your order today. River.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact. KGRAradio.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can get our podcast for just $2 per month. All you have to do is click on the podcast banner over at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, folks. It's troubling times, and fear is pushing emotions, which in turn pushes health the wrong direction. Do you ever get an ache because life is uneasy? Try Life Change Tom. Life Change Tea works on your digestive tract, helping to move food through quicker and comfortably so your health is spot on. Life Change Tea may not help with world issues, but it will help with your digestive issues. A glass a day helps keep the intruders away. So, change your life today. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. If your health game is off, get on by ordering Life Change Tea. Getthetea.com. And while you're on our site, look around at the great non-GMO organic supplements. And if you're a sales shopper, go to our specials page and see what's for you. I've been drinking the tea for 12 years, and I'm sure glad for its health benefits. Again, that's getthetea.com. Getthetea.com. The tea that makes you go.
Fadernauts, when you think about the future of our country and where we're headed, do you wonder about the food supply? I do. Disruptions in the food supply chain could be disastrous, and they usually occur with little warning. That's why the smartest thing you can do today is to stockpile emergency food, water, and other essentials. I personally recommend My Patriot Supply. They're the nation's largest emergency preparedness company, serving millions of customers for more than a decade. In fact, they're the only source my family trusts for our preparedness plan. You should too. Right now, save 20% off a full 4-week supply of delicious meals that provide 2,000 calories a day. Saving 20% helps too, doesn't it? Especially now. So go to preparewithjimmy.com and get ready. That's preparewithjimmy.com. There's no time to lose. Do it now.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the planet.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Mark Sims joins us for the first time. Tonight, we're going to talk about UFOs, ET, contact, and the internet. We're going to talk about the impact of all of this with social media and the internet and where we are today. Mark is a serial entrepreneur, computer scientist and engineer with a degree in computer-aided design from Eastern Michigan University. He worked for Sun Microsystems before starting his own business, Netrex, 1901 to 1999, the world's first pure-play internet security services company. I don't even know what that means. While running Netrex, he graduated from Harvard Business School. In 2004, Mark started his second business called Nanorex, an open-source software company. And then in 2012, he had his spiritual awakening while attending a CE5 ambassador training retreat in Borrego Springs, California. This experience changed his life dramatically and has retirement to pursue his new spiritual calling. So he started Vortrex LLC, a renewable energy company, and he began heading CE5 expeditions in Michigan and California. Now, there's two websites. They're both over at jimmychurchradio.com. That's marksims.com, and, of course, makingcontact.com. And I would like to welcome for the first time to Fade to Black, Mark Sims. Mark, you knew this day was coming.
I did. I've been looking forward to this for very having me on.
Yeah, you know, this is great. And before we get started, though, you get the first-time guest disclaimer.
All right.
I just wanted to see your face as I said that. Mark, the disclaimer is simple. It's just you and I sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends. And where the conversation starts, it starts. Where it ends, but we're going to end as friends. There you go. Check mark approval.
Check mark approval.
Okay. All right. Now, this is what is crazy. Okay. I'm actually, before we go backwards, I want to talk about our lunch that we had a couple of months ago. And at the table, it was really funny, where I started bringing up Silicon Valley tech CEOs and my anger with some of them and my delight with some of them and where the internet is today and what tech is doing. And you looked at me right in my eyeballs and you go, I was one of those guys. And you said, I was one of the good ones. They're not all bad, Jimmy. Do you remember that?
I do remember that very well, Jimmy.
And it was just so funny. Open mouth, insert foot, and I did it right there. But the point is, you were around at the beginning. So now that we got this out and on the table for everybody to know how we got off on the right and wrong foot at the same time, I couldn't wait to get you on the show so we could talk about all things, spiritual and UFOs, but of course, what brings the world together today, which is the internet. Now, if we back up and we go if we take the Wayback Machine to 1990, before Sun Microsystems, at that point in your life, had you heard of the internet?
Before 1990, no. I heard about the internet in 1991, right around just a year after that. I was working at Sun Microsystems at that time, and we were connected, our offices were connected with dial-up modems. And then we moved to dedicated high-speed, back in the day, that was 56 baud, dedicated high-speed networks, fractional T1s are what they're called. And we were all, our satellite sales offices were all connected to the Sun Microsystems headquarters in Sunnyvale. And they had an internet connection. And I was in charge of administering our internet connection, or our fractional T1, and the email and FTP. Back then, this was before there were browsers. So the main thing that we needed the fractional T1 for was to transfer files, which we did with FTP, and email. That was it. And then it was around that time that I started hearing about this thing called the internet and ARPANET. And then once I learned more about that, I was like, this is the future. And I had this idea for a business because I saw the opportunity for connecting businesses together this way, and it would transform electronic commerce.
Now, did you? There's that vision, and I can totally see that, right? Because it's fresh, it's new, and you're trying to figure out a way to take this technology into a mutually beneficial system, right? that could bring in commerce or possibly even monetize it. But did you, in your wildest dreams, expect it to turn into what it is today?
Oh, no way. No way. It was, even back then when I was aware of the file transfer benefits to transfer large data files quickly, and email, to do email. That I thought that was mind-blowing in itself. But what we have today, I really had no clue.
Do you remember the first website you ever saw?
Yes, I do. It was when it was after I started my first company, Netrex. And we were helping companies in the Detroit area connect high-speed dedicated T1s and fractional T1s to the internet for file transfer and email. That's primarily the only thing they needed. And as I was doing that business, kind of ramping up, the first web browsers came out. And, it was Netscape had one of the first browsers, and boy, it's been so long, I don't know if I could remember some of the first browsers.
Mosaic.
Mosaic, that was it.
Mosaic.
You are right. Good memory.
Mosaic. And it's so funny, Internet Explorer and everything else that we know about today. That stuff came later. And
Right.
but yeah, so what was the first web?
The first website I recall, there was a company in Detroit that we connected to the internet, and they sold computer hardware, and they had a huge inventory, a warehouse where they stocked computers, both new and used computers, and they put up the first website I ever saw. And they were a client of ours. We connected them to the internet and set up their internet security and site, and that was the first time I realized the real potential for browsers and, it being a way to sell hardware and software.
Yeah, and for me, I tried to search UFOs on AOL. And I got AOL before I got the actual internet. And they happened at the same time. I realized very quickly in a month that AOL wasn't the internet. AOL was a place. It was a destination. But to get onto the internet, you had to go a separate route. And I know it sounds crazy today, but this is what we were up against back then. And then Mosaic came out, and once I heard about Mosaic, somebody told me that there's this thing called a browser. Then I went and got a separate internet account, somehow downloaded Mosaic, like on the 5 floppy drives, and was able to do that. And then I could search UFOs. And that was the first thing the second everything worked, that was my first UFO pics or UFO pictures or whatever. And then my first websites were all UFO related. But then I realized very quickly that the internet was one thing and AOL was another. And I just used AOL less and less and less to the point where I just stopped using it.
Yeah. I didn't use AOL at all. What I was using was a thing called Gopher, which was a precursor to the World Wide Web and HTTP. It was a protocol designed for distributing, searching, or retrieving documents on the internet. And so that became a preferred way for us to upload files to a server and then download them. We were constantly doing this as part of our business of connecting companies to the internet securely. This was before firewalls. So the original firewall program that I installed as a firewall was something called, what was that called? TCP wrappers.
Oh, yes, yes.
And it was this very ugly piece of code that you had to compile and then install and configure with a configuration file. It was all text-based, and that was the first firewall. And it was open source. It had been developed, I believe, by a university. And so I was helping companies connect securely to the internet before there were firewalls. And then in 1994, the first commercial firewall products showed up, like Checkpoint. There was a product called Raptor that lasted for about 4 or 5 years, and then they succumbed to the pressure of some of the better products. The best was Checkpoint 1, or Firewall 1, by a company out of Israel called Checkpoint Software. And we became a reseller because that was our specialty, and we went back to all these clients that we had set up with the internet, and swapped out Firewall 1 in lieu of their TCP wrappers. And that allowed me to upsell, and then I could remotely manage my customers' firewalls from a central location, from my office. And this led to a thing called the Managed Security Services industry, which I was really a pioneer for. We developed a web portal, a web front end, to allow our customers to access their security devices. They were firewalls initially, and then we sold what were called intrusion detection systems and web filtering servers and antivirus servers for enterprises. And we had a web front end where our customers could log in and see their security policies, and we would collect the logs and compile them into these weekly and daily and monthly reports. And that made us a target for an acquisition back in the day. This was about 1998, 1999, when we had this full-blown managed security service offering backed up by a web portal for our customers to remotely look at their security policies and their reports, and they would call a 1-800 number that was our tech support line, and we could handle their security policy changes over the phone. And ultimately, we were purchased by a company out of Atlanta called Internet Security Systems, and they were then subsequently purchased by IBM, primarily for the managed security services offering that I had built at my first company, Netrex. And that was the only game in town back in the day. It was we were the only company offering a comprehensive managed security services offering that could be outsourced. And today, IBM still has those services that I built. All their documentation, their marketing material on their website for their managed security services is the same stuff I wrote. And we called that ePatrol. That was the name of this umbrella of managed security service offerings. And I'm really proud that it's still alive, and they're still using the documentation that I wrote. They just relabeled it. They put their IBM logo on it.
Now, sounds like you were a hardcore geek.
I was a super geek.
Super geek. No social skills?
You know what? I had some social skills, but I was a geek as well.
No, I can, and compared to what a transformation, right? Today, you're out in public, you're glowing, you're conversational, you just want to mingle, you're gregarious. You weren't that. Don't tell me you were the same person back then. You were not.
Well, I was a young
geek
kid, and when I first started playing with computers, and I got so obsessed, really, with programming, and went to college to study computer-aided design, and I learned to write 3D modeling programs, 3D CAD software programs. And then after graduating, I went into college, or went into the workforce working for Sun Microsystems, and I completely devoted 100% of my time to my career because I loved it. And so I wasn't much of a dater, or I worked and I loved it. And then after about my first year of being in the workforce working for Sun and just busting my ass, I was on a business trip flying back from Cincinnati, Ohio, to Detroit. And on the airplane, I remember very, very clearly saying, "Mark, you need to have a social life. You really need to start dating somebody." and so I said, the next girl that I meet, because back in that day in the computer industry, there were no women whatsoever that I would run into. It was all men dominated. And so I just never had an opportunity to meet a woman. So I just said, the next opportunity that I meet a beautiful woman, I'm going to ask her out, as long as I know she's not already with somebody. And I landed at the airport, got my luggage, walked out to the parking lot. This was in December, and in Michigan we had gotten some snow, so I was brushing off my windshield. And this woman comes up who's parked right next to me, and she was beautiful. And I just struck up a conversation with her as we were warming up our cars and both clearing our windshields. And I said, hey, do you want to go out for a drink? And I ended up marrying her a year later.
That is a great story. That is a great story. It never happens like that.
Right?
Man, that's a real manifest. I mean, that is just wow. Wow. Well, congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you. We had a wonderful marriage, 27 years, and we would probably still be married if it weren't for my face-to-face encounter back in 2012. It was just too much.
Now let's go back to this period though. Living this life, did you have the Sun Microsystems before you retired the first time? By the way, Mark has retired twice, and he tried to get away a couple of times, but they kept pulling him back in. But did you have an interest in UFOs, spirituality, crystals?
Well, as a kid, I was intrigued by the whole UFO thing. Of course, I was a big comic book collector, and I was just, kind of enthralled with the idea of extraterrestrials and flying saucers. It was part of the popular culture when I was a kid. Close Encounters of the Third Kind came out, and then E.T. the Extraterrestrial, and those movies I loved, and I was a big-time Trekkie. But I really wasn't familiar with the more famous cases. Like Roswell, I didn't know about until I was an adult. It wasn't something I ever studied. I was busy on my career, and so it wasn't until 2012, in the spring of 2012, I happened to just be, hanging out in my office in my home and on my computer looking at YouTube videos, random YouTube videos, and I came across the Disclosure Project from 2001, and I watched the whole thing, and I found it so riveting, and the witnesses so compelling and articulate that, if what they were saying was true, I said to myself, if what these people are telling is true, this is the biggest story in human history, and I've got to know the truth. And that led me to Greer, who had organized that event, and I learned then that he had developed this CE5 protocol and was teaching people around the world how to meditate to initiate contact, and I found it very woo-woo and, kind of confusing, frankly. How does meditating have anything to do with making contact? I found it counterintuitive, but I decided to buy his books. I read them, and after reading them, I had my brother, I have 3 brothers and a sister, and some of them are listening right now, by the way. I want to just shout out to them. I love them dearly. We had our first family reunion in 11 years here in Ojai, California at my house. It was just lovely. So I just want to say I love them all. And but my youngest brother, I'm the oldest of the 5, he came to visit me that summer of 2012, and he shared with me a series of experiences that he had back in, I think, 2008, and then as a child that he never told me. And it had to do with having contact with an extraterrestrial and seeing ships above his house back in Lafayette, Indiana, where he lives. And for me, that was like the straw that, tipped the scale, for me, because I was at that point debating on whether I would sign up for one of Greer's retreats. They were $2,500, and, I just found it, I was doing some research, and there were claims that he was like leading a cult, and, there was a lot of disinformation and bad stuff written about him. But I found his books very interesting and compelling, even though they were weird. And I decided that I would go, because my brother, had told me these very, very sincere stories, and he was emotional about it because he had never told anyone other than our father. And he was just confiding in me, and he just didn't know really what to believe about it all, and he just had to share that story. So I decided to sign up for Greer's retreat. It was a 6-day event in Borrego Springs, California. This go and rented a car, drove 2 hours to Borrego Springs, and participated in this 6-day retreat where Greer would take us out into the desert about a half-mile outside of Borrego Springs, this small town of about 3,000 people. And in the middle of the Anza Borrego Desert, we would meditate for about 5 hours. We'd have breaks, meditate twice for an hour and a half at a go, and on the 5th night of meditating with this group, after our first meditation, I was looking up in the sky, and this ship materialized out of thin air. And when I saw that, I knew without any doubt that was not of this world.
What do you mean? I've just got a minute before. Realized. How big was it?
Well, it was this egg-shaped green craft, what I assume was a craft at the time. I think now it may be something very different, but at that time, as I was meditating and listening to all the stories, I had more of a traditional concept of ETs and their craft, that they were made of materials that were physical, but this thing materialized out of thin, and I saw the transition, like it really never fully materialized because it was moving in the sky above us, and I could always see the stars behind it as it was moving, and it was moving from about a quarter of a mile above us in the sky down to the desert floor. Wow. And as it got to the desert floor, it dematerialized.
That's I've got more questions. Let's take our break right here. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Mark Sims. We're going to do it all tonight. UFOs, ET contact, and the internet, social media, all of that. Stay with us. More with Mark after this short break. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Stay with us.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
This is Billy Carson with ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Forbidden Knowledge TV has just reached its 1-year anniversary. That's right. 1 year. And as a show of appreciation, we are giving all new subscribers a free 30-day trial. Of movies, documentaries, conferences, workshops, lectures, yoga classes, meditation courses, and so much more. So log on to ForbiddenKnowledge.tv from your computer or mobile device, or get the Forbidden Knowledge TV app on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon, iTunes, or Google Play today, and use coupon code 30days free. That's coupon code 30 days free on ForbiddenKnowledge.tv today.
The pony you always wanted. Damn it. Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network. KGRADB.com.
Listen, I know, and you know, that you've always wanted your first crystal skull. Or maybe you're a collector just like me, but you just don't know where to go to find the real thing. Then I met Carolyn Ford over at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com.
Carolyn is the guardian of Einstein, one of the most respected ancient crystal skulls in the world. All of her unique skulls have been imprinted sitting with Einstein in his sacred lodge and are carved from the finest gemstone and materials. Imprinting is the process of receiving the ancient wisdom from the master skull or master computer. Einstein, the ancient crystal skull. To see Carolyn's current collection of crystal skulls, just visit her store at EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com or click on the banner over on our site. Don't forget to use the promo code Jimmy at checkout to receive 10% off of your order today. That's promo code Jimmy. Finding your first or next crystal skull is easy. Just visit EinsteinTheCrystalSkull.com. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2B Blend for 15% off of your order today.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. We're also Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can become an official Fadernaut by just going to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hello, this is Serena Wright Taylor from Conscious Life Expo, and you're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, who holds the Lucky Pony record for the best astrological chart since 1963. True story.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Mark Sims is here. This was gifted to me by Mark Sims. I was showing everybody that last night. It just stays right here by my side, Mark. It's just right here and stares at me. And thank you for that. Now, I don't want to get too far ahead of our skis. I want to circle back to that event in Borrego Springs. We're going to do that. But I want to back up for a second because leading up to that moment, we've got a few years here we've kind of skipped over. Were you, at that time, hanging out on the internet? How were you surfing? Were you a part of any groups? You know, how were you treating the internet?
Well, I was really a business person, just trying to help my customers connect securely, and I was very busy. I really didn't have time to kind of hang out and do any social networking or be on message boards or part of a, club online. It was all about working.
Did you know at that time, being an internet pioneer, that the number one search word was porn, right? We all know that. Number 2 was UFOs. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's crazy. And compared to what you know now, like, the FBI's website, number 1 search term, UFOs, right? It's what people want to know today. It's fascinating to me knowing what you do now and what, not only what you do, but the world that you're in, the social media sphere, that back then you weren't a part of any of that.
Yeah, that's true. I really wasn't. I was just focused on trying to make a living, and I was really excited about starting a company after working for some. I had been a paper boy when I was 13 and 14 years old for 2 years, and I really enjoyed having a business. I did it all. I took a product, I delivered it. I took pride in doing that well. I had to once a month go and do my collection of all the from all the subscribers, and then I had to pay my supplier, the Ann Arbor News, because that was the newspaper I was delivering. So, and then I was left over with a profit, and I just loved the power that came from making money all by myself. And I remember the first time I went out and collected from my subscribers after delivering papers for a month, I wasn't prepared for all the cash. So, I didn't have like a paper bag or a backpack to hold all the cash. And back then, there weren't credit cards or digital currency. I got, a $5 bill or a few $3 bills and change for the month. And my pockets were stuffed with coins and the $1 and $5 bills. And when I got home, I took all this money out and made a big pile of it. And I got chills. I was like, this was more money than I'd ever seen in my life. I was 13 years old. I got chills, and I said, I'm going to be a businessman one day. And that moment, I knew I was going to one day start a company, which I did.
The other stuff, staying on the internet, but then there was also, television and some of the stuff that was happening in the 90s, like the alien autopsy, right? And what did you hear about that?
I heard about it, but much, much later. I remember in the late 90s, I think there was something going along, coming up on the internet then. This was when maybe Facebook was just beginning, and I might have had my first Facebook account. I really can't recall. I do remember being in my first company, Netrex, in my office in the year leading up to me selling the company, and coming across a website or a YouTube video with that, and that's the first time I saw the autopsy video.
Now, the other part of this, which we're going to get into more later, but I always felt, and I really mean this, that up until very recently, the internet was a kinder, gentler place. Right? It wasn't a place of angst. It wasn't a place of fighting and arguing. That goes on anywhere, and it certainly happened. But it wasn't like that for so long, right? It was a different sort of venue.
Yeah. The social media wasn't what it is now at all. I was just looking up Facebook. Facebook came out in 2004, and by 2004, I had sold my first company and retired and started my second company. So social media was just budding back then. What was it? What was the first social media platform? It wasn't Facebook. It was like Space.
MySpace. I never had a MySpace account.
I didn't either. No. I just wasn't into it. I was just too busy doing other things. I really wasn't interested. And so, But what did interest me was the tech. And I always enjoyed 3D graphics and its potential to be applied in ways that made it easier to design things at various scales. I was really intrigued by a book I read in 1986 or 87 called Engines of Creation by Dr. Eric Drexler. He was the first one to write a book about the potential for advanced nanosystems. And I read that book, and it really sparked my imagination. And I realized that it would be one day possible to build nanoscale machine systems in atomic resolution. But that would require a new kind of CAD platform that had never been created yet in the world. And I thought to myself, when a company is founded to do that, to develop a 3D modeling system for atomistic level modeling, I would want to work for them. And so when I retired in 2000 or late 1999, I retired for a few years, and I got antsy. I was still young and wanted to make something of my energy and my passion for technology. And so I decided to start Nanorex. This was my second business, where we developed a program called Nano Engineer 1 exclusively for the purpose of designing and simulating nanoscale machine systems, like what people would now call nanobots or nanomachines.
So all of those, like the world's smallest guitar, right?
Yeah.
Right? That was you.
That was, well,
not you, but that's
any molecular guitars, but we did other things that was really remarkable.
I remember seeing all of that and wondering how it could possibly be done. But there was somebody out there working on this. There was somebody designing this, somebody assembling this, and you saw a need for that market.
I did. I thought that nanotechnology could be applied to solve some of the biggest problems facing humanity in medicine, in energy production, and in pollution.
Absolutely fascinating subject for me. Okay, now I could talk nanotechnology forever. The other part of this is for somebody with a very severe coding background, an engineering background, a nanotechnology background, internet security background. It's very dry, very black and white, very pragmatic. For somebody that is doing this to go to a full-blown spiritual awakening, that. How did you deal with that?
Well, what your listeners should know, at that time of my life when this happened, this face-to-face encounter happened, I was an atheist. I was what you would call a classic material scientist, kind of a reductionist. My view of the world is that the cosmos and we and all life in the universe was basically a consequence of random chance, and this would be proven one day in science.
Right.
But and so I didn't believe in the afterlife. I didn't believe in a God. I was, very, very devout, you could say, as an atheist. I was very outspoken about it. I thought, the people who were in positions of leadership and power at the institutions of religion were primarily controlling people through fear and the dogma of guilt and sin, original sin, and I thought that was awful. And not saying that doesn't happen in certain cases, but it gave me a very jaded view of religion. And
so there's hope for Richard Dawkins, is what you're saying. There's hope. There's hope for Neil deGrasse Tyson yet.
Yeah. Oh, well, when you have a face-to-face encounter with an extraterrestrial, well, let me step back.
Yes.
For me, my encounter came in the context of this 6-day retreat when I'm with Greer, and I am hoping. I'm very skeptical, but I'm hoping that I might just make contact. And when I saw that ship that night of November 15th, 2012, with 24 other people. For me, my world immediately changed. I knew without a doubt that they are here among us, that what I saw was definitely not man-made. It was otherworldly. It was awe-inspiring. And what's more, I would have said, and I think I did say, that was of a divine nature. It had this quality of light that, originated from within this egg-shaped craft that what was so beautiful and filled me with such awe that I was awestruck. I mean, I really was awestruck, and it touched me very deeply.
Mark, did everybody else see it?
Not everyone. It was only visible for about 4 seconds.
Right.
And we were seated in a circle, and it was not directly above us. It was to the east-northeast of our location, and so people who had their back to it did not see it. It was pitch black. Nobody could see where we were pointing, but those of us that saw it very clearly, and we were screaming and pointing, and by the time people turned around, some of them, it was too late. Some people who turned around right away did see it, but they caught the very last second. It began materializing, and then I saw it when it dematerialized. It appeared in my line of sight perfectly.
Now, I understand the drama, right? It's dramatic. This is a paradigm shift. It's all of those things, but truly, how quickly did your mindset
well, instantaneously. My reaction was elation, because for me it was more than just realizing that we're not alone. I mean, everybody who hasn't had a major sighting or contact experience, something that convinces them that ETs are real and that they're here. If you haven't had that experience, there's always that doubt. And for most people who are skeptical, they think, like, Neil deGrasse Tyson, that, the distances are too vast for us to ever for them to get here. And so that's a logical thing to believe. It's rational. But there seems to be some way in which these craft or ETs are traveling vast distances faster than the speed of light. And I believe that's through higher dimensional methods, but I don't want to digress. But the point is that it is, the first phase I went through of a conscious shift was just the elation that we're not alone. And that made me very happy because we share something in common with other intelligent species. And that is that we're alive. If you have reverence for life, then you're going to be excited about the idea that life exists elsewhere. And that was my immediate reaction. It wasn't one of fear. It was one of elation. So then I just wanted to ask Greer and some of the other people who had claimed to have contact with extraterrestrials more about their relationship with ETs. It wasn't Greer, it was another older gentleman who was a doctor, and he claimed to have had a relationship with a mantis being named Charmaine. She was a doctor from her home planet. She looked like a praying mantis. And he claimed he had had a relationship with her for over 2 years, and that his relationship began when he went to his first CE5 retreat with Greer. So when I saw that ship and realized that they are here, I immediately went over to this doctor and I said, I want to know more about Charmaine. Tell me about your relationship with Charmaine. And he was very gracious and, very, very humble and very sweet about sharing anything I had to ask about his relationship with Charmaine. And I learned a lot that night. And that's what I did for the rest of the evening until we left the work field site in the desert. We went back to our hotel, and I went to my room alone. And of course, after getting ready for bed, I'm laying in the bed, and I cannot fall asleep. I'm ruminating about the implications of this. Now that I've seen a ship, and I know they're here, and that it seems possible that members of the human family are in contact and have these deep relationships where they're learning things from these intelligent beings. What an opportunity. I wanted that.
Well, let me ask you a quick question. Leading up to Borrego Springs, did you have expectations?
Oh, no. I really was a skeptic.
Okay.
I went there. I said there's probably a very small chance that I'm going to see anything. And my chance of actually having a face-to-face encounter was next to zero.
Sure.
I wanted I would have been happy just seeing something that I found compelling and convincing that is not a natural phenomena or a aircraft, a man-made craft vehicle. So so that's really what I was hoping for. And I was skeptical. I really still was skeptical, even after watching the Disclosure Project video where these very credible people claim to have encountered ETs and UFOs.
Now, 5 days later, everything tips over, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, completely.
Well, in a span of about 3 hours, I go from my first sighting and that shift of consciousness, realizing that we're not alone. And not only are we not alone, but they're right here on Earth. And they seem to be very reclusive and aloof. What's that about? And then after tossing and turning and realizing there's no way I'm going to fall asleep, I decide to sit up in my bed and try making contact. I really felt like as I was laying there in bed, tossing and turning, I'm thinking, that was a major sighting that many of us saw. And my guess is that they are probably monitoring each one of us to see how we're reacting right now. And I wanted to show them that I had the courage and the boldness to reach out to them, and that I wasn't going to be afraid, and that I was willing to make contact, face-to-face contact, and that I desired this. So I assumed that maybe they're monitoring me, and clearly this claim that Greer had made, that meditating and setting an intention while meditating to make contact seems to work, that there's a cause and effect relationship between meditating and them responding. So there's something with consciousness that we're communicating, we're initiating that call for contact through a meditative practice, and that's mind-blowing in its own. And now that I knew that was a fact, that it was working, that it had worked and resulted in this major sighting, I decided that I would sit up and meditate in my bed and make a sincere effort to establish contact with an extraterrestrial, and that if they showed up in my room, that I wasn't going to freak out. And so I thought of a greeting that I would make in the unlikely event that an ET would show up in my hotel room. And it had three components. The first thing I wanted to let them know is that I was very grateful and honored that they would respond to my call. Two, that I desired a relationship. Now that I knew that people like this doctor and Greer himself claimed to have met and had relationships with extraterrestrials, I now believe that that was a possibility. And I wanted that intention to be known, that I desired a relationship. And thirdly, I remembered something that Greer had said to our group earlier in the week, and that was that it's very important for you to give them permission to show up, that they are operating basically on what's called the prime directive principle out of Star Trek. And so if you really want a face-to-face contact, it's very critical that you say, I welcome you here. I give you permission to show up. And so those were the three things I wanted to say, is that I give them permission that I trust them to do with me and my body anything that they choose, because I wanted to be taken on board a craft.
Right here, I'm going to pause because I want to hear the rest of this when we come back after the break. But you know this sounds like Crazy Town, right?
I know that.
Right? And were you thinking to yourself, am I nuts? Am I going crazy?
You know, I wasn't until he appeared and then what happened later, a few minutes after he appeared in my room, then I started wondering if I was going crazy.
Okay, and that's a great, honest, and reflective response and answer. Let's take our break right here. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, the one and only Mark Sims. An incredible life's journey. We're going to continue all of this. It is UFOs, ET contact, and the internet. All of that with Mark Sims. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Do you want to be an official Fadernaut? Of course you do. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Just go to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com. This is Jimmy Church, and I invite you to attend the 20th Annual Los Angeles Conscious Life Expo live and in person this September 17th, 18th, and 19th at the LAX Airport Hilton. Connect with exhibitors, community, thought leaders, and friends as we begin to recreate the world. You can also watch the expo from the comfort of your own home. Live stream from the main stage in Los Angeles and from the main stage in London. Truly a global simulcast event broadcast around the world. Live stream and in-person expo tickets are available now. I'll be your host all weekend long from Los Angeles. And on Friday, it's my Ancient Secrets and Earth Mysteries themed segment with James Keenan, Caroline Corey, and William Henry. And on Saturday, Daniel Sheen and I sit down for a one-on-one interview live. We have an amazing lineup of 25 speakers, including Bashar, Gail Thackeray, Kimberly Meredith, Whitley Strieber, Stephen Bassett, Daniel Brinkley, and Lisa Garr. Please visit ConsciousLifeExpo.com for tickets and info. That's ConsciousLifeExpo.com and use that promo code Jimmy for a special discount. Fadernauts. When you think about the future of our country and where we're headed, do you wonder about the food supply? I do. Disruptions in the food supply chain could be disastrous, and they usually occur with little warning. That's why the smartest thing you can do today is to stockpile emergency food, water, and other essentials. I personally recommend My Patriot Supply. They're the nation's largest emergency preparedness company, serving millions of customers for more than a decade. In fact, they're the only source my family trusts for our preparedness plan. You should too. Right now, save 20% off a full 4-week supply of delicious meals that provide 2,000 calories a day. Saving 20% helps too, doesn't it? Especially now. So go to preparewithjimmy.com and get ready. That's preparewithjimmy.com. There's no time to lose. Do it now.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA. KGRARadio.com.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Mark Sims is here. More with Mark right after this short break. And because right now, I need to talk to you about Virtual Shield. Virtual Shield VPN. You need your own VPN. You've got to do it. You've got to do it now, especially after listening to Mark. You know, he knows about internet security and where we are today with all of this. Virtual Shield is the absolute best. I run it on all of my computers. Everything in both studios runs Virtual Shield. Your search history is your own. It's not logged. We have encrypted servers all around the world. Everything, your location, everything is private. And this is the internet world we live in today. And it's all simple to do. You need your own VPN. And the best out there is Virtual Shield. So just click on the link in the video description box below. You'll get it for 50% off today. Type in virtualshield.com/fade to black. Virtual Shield for 50% off. Go over to our website. The banners, the links, everything is there. Click Virtual Shield for 50% off today. You've got to do it now. And like I said, Mark Sims knows about internet security. So with that, let's, you know what's really funny? Right as I said that, Mark got up and walked away. And I'm wondering right now if he, what was that?
Sorry about that.
What was that all about?
Well, my dog is very demanding of my attention.
What kind of dog do you have?
I have a Husky German Shepherd mix named Bingo.
Oh, where's he at?
Well, he's outside. That's why I had to run. I needed to feed him, but that's the other thing. I forgot to feed him, and I'm home alone right now. So during the break, I rushed and got him a meal and put it outside, and then I forgot to do something, so I had to run and take care of him, and now he's happy.
That's a really cool mix. Husky German Shepherd. What color is he?
He's golden white.
Golden white. All right. Yeah, he would have to be. Beautiful. Right. He would have to be. Love dogs. Now, a little recap. Mark heads out to a CE5 protocol, does 4 days of meditation in Borrego Springs. Sees an egg-shaped craft materialize in front of him. It's glowing green. It was interesting how Mark describes he could see the stars behind it, so it wasn't 100% solid, and we've all seen stuff like this. It's great. It descends to the desert floor, disappears. Then Mark goes back to his hotel room. Mark is alone, can't sleep. He's fidgeted and says, dang it. I want to meet you guys. And the invitation is there. All right. What happens next, Mark?
Well, so this protocol that I had learned from Greer involves closing your eyes and saying a mantra over and over again, a 3-syllable mantra. And there's also a visualization technique that goes with that. It's a bit like, tapping your head and rubbing your belly at the same time. It's multitasking, mental multitasking, and it's really difficult. I found it challenging, but after 5 days of doing this, you get better at it. So I sat up in my bed in the lotus seated position, and I began doing this protocol. And after a moment or two, I noticed this light blue, foggy light in my third eye began swirling like a whirlpool of light. And it got brighter and brighter, and it began coalescing into this very bright, well-defined sphere. And then these rings of light came into it from outside. After a minute of that, then this orb began morphing into a humanoid shape. And it just persisted in my third eye with my eyes closed. It was very bright. It was very clear to be a humanoid figure. And after about 5 minutes of it just being there in my third eye, I opened my eyes, and standing at the end of my bed, as if my eyes had been open the entire time, was this being that was clearly non-physical. It was glowing. It was scintillating. There were parts of its body that were transparent. I could see through its torso, for instance, while its head was more opaque and glowing. And one of the things
do you need to let Bingo back in?
What?
Do you need to let Bingo back in the house?
No, we have friends coming over.
Okay.
So I think he's here. I'm going to close this, and hopefully you're. We have friends that are coming over, and they're starting to come in the back gate, and he doesn't know that it's them.
I love live radio. I love live radio. I wanted to meet Bingo. Okay, so standing now, you open. This is what I find interesting, and I'm glad we had this little interruption. Your eyes are closed, and this light is manifesting itself inside of your eyelids, right?
That's right.
Right?
That's
and
right.
But then when you open your eyes, I want to understand exactly what you're saying here. When you open your eyes, exactly what you were seeing start to form was actually right in front of you.
That's right. And the only difference is now I am seeing the room as well. It's like a composite of what I was seeing with my eyes closed, but now I can see some of the room. Even though it was very dark in the room, my eyes were adjusted to the dark. And I could see and make out the walls and the window that this light being was standing in front of, and the curtains as well. And so it was very clear to me that this was not a physical being. It was, if I had not known any better, if I had not been prepared, I would have thought I was looking at a ghost.
And, okay, I have to ask the honest question, Mark. What's going through your mind at this moment?
Well, at that very moment, I believed that I was looking at a extraterrestrial that was either being holographically projected into my room,
right,
or it was a light being, because, by this time I had heard of such things in this over this 5-day period with people. They talked about light beings. I didn't really associate light beings as part of the ET cosmology. But by the end of 5 days, it was clear to me that people talked about these higher dimensional beings that were non-physical, and they would appear as light beings. And so I assumed either I was looking at one of these light beings, or this was a holographic projection of a physical being, possibly on a craft near the hotel. And but what was really strange about this, now my background in training, as I mentioned earlier, is in computer graphics. So I had written programs early in my career that that draw renderings, computer sources and the light coloring and other things, the surfaces, the properties of the surfaces. And, you know, of course, when you're doing that, you want it to look as realistic as possible. And so I was very familiar with all the things that go into creating a scene to make it look realistic. And what I saw standing at the end of my bed did not seem right. And what I mean by that is when something is glowing brightly in a room, in a dark room, you expect there to be ambient light on the walls given off by the light source. And this thing was not doing that. It was very bright, but there was no glow effect on the walls or on the bed.
That doesn't make any sense. How does your pragmatic mind deal with something like that?
Well, I was just kind of making a note of it.
Right.
I knew what I was looking at was right there, but it wasn't, you know, producing the light that you would expect.
Yeah, the natural things that occur that allow your brain to compute, right, to understand what you're seeing, none of that is there.
None of that is there. Hold on real quick. I've just got a very important text. You know, I'm doing this, we go live tomorrow with our Making Contact campus. And so this is a really critical time.
Do I know who just texted you? I do, don't I?
Yeah, you probably do.
Okay, tell him he's interrupting the show, and I will call him later.
Oh, that's funny, Jimmy. You're a stitch.
Okay. So there's no glow in the room. There's nothing creating shadows. There's none of that. You've got an artificial construct that must be projected. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you know, looking back on it, and it was now, you know, years later, after all my research, now it makes perfect sense to me. What I believe I was seeing was a higher dimensional being with a composite of what I thought standing at the end of my bed and what my physical eyes were seeing. And that was being combined in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
And my guess is that if there had been somebody standing next to me, they may not have seen what I was seeing, but I was certainly seeing it very clearly.
Now, did you make an attempt at communication?
I did. Now, this greeting I had prepared, I mentioned earlier before the last break, was very clear with me, and so I just sat there looking at it before I greeted it, because I wasn't sure what was going to happen next. It was just standing there at the end of my bed, and what I was a little worried about is that it would fade away, kind of like the craft had. It had been a very brief view of this craft, and I was concerned that since it was non-physical, clearly non-physical, that it might just fade away like the craft. And so what I was most concerned about when I first saw it was burning into my memory what I was looking at, because I'm a decent illustrator, and I wanted to be able to reproduce a rendering of this being that I was looking at. And it had eyes, it had this pointy head, it was very skinny. Its skinny arms had longer fingers than normal human fingers, slightly, and its arms appeared to be slightly longer than human arms as well. And so after a few minutes of burning into my memory what I was looking at, I then gave the greeting, and I gave it telepathically because I'd been hearing from Greer and others that they can read your mind. So I assumed that he could read my mind, and I gave this practiced greeting to this being that's standing at the end of my bed. And I said, I am very honored and grateful that you are here. I hope this is the beginning of a lifelong friendship. And I completely trust you to do with me and my body anything that you choose. I completely trust you.
Wow.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said. And as soon as that thought was projected, he began walking from the end of my bed and approaching me on my left side. And as he's approaching me, I'm not going to move a muscle. I'm not going to do anything to spook it. I want to show that I'm good on my word and that I'm not going to freak out, and I'm just not going to move a muscle. And as he's getting closer and closer, I'm looking up into his face and into those eyes.
What did you see?
And what I saw after he got really close to me, he stopped, and he was right next to me, and I was looking up, to my left, up into his face. And what I realized is that what I thought were eyes with these strange, like U-shaped pupils were not eyes at all, but like sockets of a skull. And what I perceived as pupils when he was standing at the end of my bed were the superior suture and the orbital canal for the optic nerve from the eyeball that goes from the eyeball to the brain. And that's what I saw. And it was very clear that these were sockets of a skull, and there was no eyeball. And like it wasn't computing. I was confused more than I was shocked or scared. I wasn't freaking out. I was just like, is this really what I'm looking at? And so I just kind of turned my head ever so slightly to look at him straight on. And as I peered into those eyes, I noticed that there were these patterns of light that I could see inside of his head behind those eyes. And these patterns of light were reminiscent of sacred geometry. It was very, very weird. And it was mesmerizing as well. I was kind of drawn into his eyes almost. And then I noticed that something was moving down lower. And I looked down, and it's his hand with his index finger extended, and he's slowly coming towards my elbow with his index finger. And he's going to touch me. It's very clear. He's slowly and intentionally, coming for my elbow. And so I let him. Okay, go ahead and touch me. And his finger touches my elbow, and I feel it. It feels like a soft, tingly sensation. And then he continues to push his finger into my elbow, and I can feel it penetrating my elbow. I can feel that tingly sensation where his finger is going inside of my elbow, and then through the left side of my torso, and then he continues through my back, through the right side of my body, and then his left shoulder, or his right shoulder rather, merges with my left shoulder. And when that happened, that's when I freaked out. I was like, whoa, it was just such a strong tingling sensation when our shoulders began merging that I had this fight or flight response, and I was getting ready to jump up. But I forced myself, I caught myself right before I jumped up, and I forced myself to sit still because I had just told him that I trusted him, and I wanted to honor that. So it was a really very difficult thing, let me tell you, to force myself to sit still as this being is walking into my body, and now my body is lighting up. I'm getting tingly all over, and that was very freaky. And I just held on. It was like, I don't know, it's like going down, I often use the analogy of going down that first big hill on a roller coaster, and you're just like holding on for dear life. And that's similar. I didn't know what to expect, and I was completely surrendering to this experience.
Can I ask you something really quick? Because I'm picturing all of this. Was he clothed?
No, he didn't appear to have any clothing.
Okay, and now perfect. So the extended arm, there's no there's no sleeve, right? You're
There's
looking
no
at
sleeve
his
fabric. No, he was, and there was no genitalia. I mean, I've got a rendering that I did. I did draw a pencil drawing, and then I did a Photoshop drawing, and then I hired a professional illustrator to write the cover, to draw a illustration for the cover of my book that's going to be coming out.
Now, I don't want to make light of this, okay? I'm not. But this question may sound a little cavalier. But he's buck naked. Right?
Well, he's not wearing any clothing, but he's also kind of, transparent and scintillating. It's and you don't see any genitalia. I mean, he doesn't have.
But that's I know, right? And that's my next question. Your eyes are going to gravitate to that area.
Yeah. Well,
it was blank.
Gravitated when he was standing at the end of my bed.
Yes, right.
There wasn't anything there.
There was nothing there. So when he's standing next to you, you didn't have anything staring at you in the face then. So he's next to you, and you're laughing. You understand what I'm saying. So you didn't have that to deal with.
Yeah.
Right.
No, it's
okay.
Good question.
I feel much better, actually. Okay, so let's proceed here. You didn't jump up. Your bodies are merging, right? He's got his arm inside of your shoulder.
And he continues to insert himself into my body until he's completely merged with me.
Oh, okay.
And when that process has finished, I am left tingling all over, like electric, it's not like a strong electric shock. It's like pins and needles that you get when your arm falls asleep, or
yes.
That feeling. Imagine that feeling completely all over your body.
Not cool.
Well,
cool.
it was. It was strange.
Yeah, because when you wake up, you're sleeping on your arm, right, and your arm's asleep, and it's like, oh man, and you've got to wait, right? That's not a fun feeling to go through. But this was head to toe.
Right.
Mark's getting another text. Is it from Captain Ron?
No, it's not from Captain Ron. If you're listening, Captain Ron, text me after the show, not during the show.
I hope he's listening. I love Captain Ron, man.
He's such a great guy. I'm really enjoying getting to become good friends with him.
I've known him for a long time, and I've got mad bro love for Captain Ron, and he knows this, and so much respect for his efforts and his commitment to the community and everything else. And he's a pretty funny guy, and that's the other part.
He's a lot of fun.
And he's funny looking, too, as well. Okay, so what happens next? Does the tingling go away like it does when your arm falls asleep?
Yeah, it took about 2 minutes, I would guess, for it to completely go away. And when it does finally go away and I feel physically normal, I am left with this acute awareness that there is another being inside of me, that there's it's very clear it's a dude, it's a male energy. And I'm just like, is there really another person inside of me? It's like there's two cohabitants in this one physical body. And I don't know how I knew that, but there was no doubt there's another person inside of me, another entity. And so after kind of gathering myself and being certain of this, I ask him my first question, and I say, "What is your name?" And using my mouth and my vocal cords, he says, "Tejbar." Just like that, Jimmy.
Say it again.
Tejbar.
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 Oh, man.
So
wow.
I say Tejbar, and he said no, Tejbar. And I said, spell it, because I couldn't really get it. It was such a strong and unusual pronunciation, and I clearly wasn't understanding it. And he said, just like this, and he used my hand. He did this. I'm going to show you what he did to me. With his fingers, he said, T-E-Z-J-B-A-R, Tejbar. Just like that. I kid you not. That is exactly how he said it.
Now, what about? I've got 2 minutes before the break, and I'm going to say this out front. This is one of the best shows ever on Fade to Black. I'm just enjoying all of this. But have you been in contact? Has anybody from Sun Microsystems? Has anybody from IBM? Has anybody reached out?
No. I had a lot of colleagues back in the Sun days, I call them, and I've not maintained any relationships with those people. There's one guy who recently reached out to me, but he was completely unaware, or he didn't mention it, that he knew anything about my ET contact experience. Once I left that business, that was in 1992, I started a new career and kind of lost contact over the years with those people at Sun, even though I had a lot of friends there.
This is a big show. Number one, you never know who's listening, right? That's the first thing. But the second part of it, let's say somebody reaches out from Sun, do you think that they would go, you know what, I knew it? If there was anybody, it would be you, Mark.
I don't think so. I think that this would be a surprise to any of my old friends and colleagues.
Looking at pictures of you from the past, you look, how do I say this? This is a kind compliment, but you have changed physically.
There's no doubt.
Yeah. It's really funny, the transformation. The old you was cool and handsome and all of that, but you are not the same person that you were 15 years ago.
That's for sure.
He's smiling as he says that. Let's take our break right here. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Mark Sims. What a great conversation. But we're going to find out what happens next, right? This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Stay with us.
JimmyChurchRadio.com. This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
Why is it we're not very good with our health regimen until it's too late? We don't put oil in the car until the engine blows up. When the body's out of balance, your health is not so good. Give your body some love. Log on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. Try our Life Change Tea, which cleanses. A clean colon is one of the ways to bring the body in balance. We also carry organic supplements to help you get where you need to go. So do your body a favor. Log on to GetTheT.com. That's GetTheT.com. You can even visit our sales page to save some dough. Does anybody call money dough anymore? Anyway, if you're looking for short, helpful health tips, go to YouTube and punch in Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. So, log on to GetTheT.com, shop, get balanced, then learn some cool tips at Health Matters Now. You'll be glad you did. That's GetTheT.com.
Your contact for current news and trending topics. KGRARadio.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I only drink Fade to Black blend coffee from Rivermoon. Just click on the Rivermoon Coffee banner at jimmychurchradio.com. Promo code F2B Blend.
This is the only way forward.
This is Fade to Black. Make contact. KGRARadio.com.
When you're in the house for longer periods of time, You can see them flying or running across the floor. Ooh, yuck. They're unhealthy, gross, and disgusting. Bugs. I loathe bugs. We keep a clean home, but occasionally bugs show up. Well, I found something that is tougher than bugs. Orange Guard. On contact, it kills hidden bugs, including ants, roaches, and fleas. Plus, Orange Guard is a residual repellent. All of the ingredients of Orange Guard are on the FDA generally recognized as safe list. Orange Guard may be used around food, humans, and pets. It comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Orange Guard, available at orangeguard.com, Whole Foods, and Ace Hardware.
Gold loves chaos, uncertainty, and disarray. History shows us what gold does when people aren't sure about the government, the stock market, their jobs, or their retirement savings. Our national debt is skyrocketing. Gold and other precious metals are a defense measure against inflation and a stock market that might take years to recover. So what can you do right now to protect yourself? Call United Gold Group. We offer gold and other precious metals delivered securely within 72 hours. Are you worried about the stock market? We can also help you set up a real gold or silver IRA or a 401k. Safe and secure. United Gold Group makes gold ownership affordable. Call now and get up to $2,500 in free gold or silver with a qualified IRA. Call 800-753-8534. That's 800-753-8534 or visit UnitedGoldGroup.com.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why fade to black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
Oh, man, I am enjoying what is going on in the YouTube chat. I've been hanging out. I'm just going to say this. Our moderators tonight have been working overtime. We got the invasion of Russian porn sites in the YouTube chat. It's crazy what's going on over there. It's nothing but block. It's crazy. The show with live streams, Mark, as you fully understand, we have a big audience, and they know this, right? So that they just once in a while, it's a night like it has never been. It's funny. It is really funny, man. It's just it's like whack-a-mole, right? You just can't keep up. It's absolutely crazy. Multiple accounts. So you guys, Bill, Block Chick, you guys, if there's anything I can do to make up for the overtime that you guys have put in tonight, it's been absolutely fun to watch. Absolutely fun to watch. Okay, so Tejbar, right? Let's we're going to circle back, but I've got to know, what was it like when you woke up?
Well, I did not go to sleep that night. In fact, I didn't go to sleep for the next 2 nights.
Ooh. Are you at this point questioning reality, questioning the world, questioning everything you were taught?
I'm not questioning reality. I feel a lot of weird things happened after he entered my body. After asking him his name, I then asked where was he from, and his answer was, "I'm from Earth." And I'm like, what? You do not look like any Earth creature I have ever seen. Can you explain? And he went on to say that when he was once human, and that he lived roughly 3,000 years ago in an area that is today called Tierra del Fuego. And he said, I would find this place at the very southern tip of South America.
Right.
So this came in very clear. I had never heard of a place called Tierra del Fuego. I've never set foot, even to this day, I've never been in South America. So I wasn't familiar with this place. And it came through so clear that he had said this, that I decided to get my computer. And I had a laptop with me. I had Wi-Fi internet access in the hotel. And I wanted to confirm this because my mother is she's now retired, was a academic psychologist. And being the son of an academic psychologist, I was very aware of all the different mental disorders, all the psychoses that exist. And I knew what I had just experienced was very real. But this experience of talking to somebody who's in my body and in my mind made me consider that maybe I had created an alter ego, that this was a consequence of this physical experience, and that I had just invented an invisible person and I was simply talking to myself.
Sure.
But this answer I had just been given was not something I was aware of. And I wanted to confirm that such a place existed. So I got my computer up, I started Google Earth, and I typed in Tierra del Fuego, and I hit the search button. And you know how the globe of Google Earth begins to spin and zoom in on the location you type in?
Mm-hmm.
It's going towards the southern tip of South America, and I just felt goosebumps all over. And when it finally zoomed in, and the letters came up, Tierra del Fuego, you could have knocked me over with a feather. It was just so mind-boggling to me. And so before putting away my computer, I decided maybe I should do a Google search on the name Tejbar that he had spelled. And, it was such an unusual spelling that I felt, why not give it a try? Maybe something would come up. So when I typed it in, there was one hit in the entire Google library. And when I clicked on it, it took me to a book that was published in 1916 by an anthropologist named John Cooper. And it was a book about the indigenous tribes of Tierra del Fuego.
Shut up.
No, it's true. You can look this up.
No. I'm just saying, shut the front door.
So it was a book that was on the Google Books library that had been scanned. And when I opened up this digital book, I searched for Tejbar. And in the back of the book, there was a small glossary that the author had made of these words from the Fuegian language. This is the language that the tribes of Tierra del Fuego speak. And the word Tejbar, this is the phonetic spelling of a word in their language. It translates directly to the word forehead. I kid you not. You can look this up. This is a fact.
And now, is he still inside of you?
Right this minute?
Yesterday?
Well, yeah, he was still in me at this moment that I was looking him up on looking up the word Tejbar. And I took this as a second major confirmation that I wasn't imagining this experience. So I put away my computer, and I had brought with me a journal that I was keeping notes in for the retreat. And I began interviewing him. I turned on the little lamp next to me and on the nightstand, and I sat up in my bed, and I started interviewing him, literally. And he began telling me about, because I was curious. I said, okay, so you were human. What happened to you when you died? He said, I ascended to the astral realm. I said, is this a place that the Christians would call heaven? It sounds sort of like heaven. And he says, yes, indeed, this is the place that the Christians would call heaven, but it's much more than that. It's more complex than the Christian concept of heaven. And I said, is this where I will go when I die? And he said, no, not necessarily. He says, one of two things happen when you die. What typically happens is that you're reincarnated to continue your spiritual journey and development. And only under certain conditions does the soul evolve and ascend, go to its next major stage of evolution. And that, according to Tejbar, is ascension to this place he called the astral realm. Now, he's telling this to an atheist, not just any atheist. I was a devout atheist, as I said before. For instance, I belonged to an atheistic or agnostic Jewish temple that we were and I was on the board of that temple. I was a lifetime member of the Freedom from Religion Foundation that was started by Dan Baker and his wife. He was at one time a minister, and he converted to become an atheist. And I thought he was a wonderful man. He's written books, and he founded this organization, a nonprofit called the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and I was supporting them. I donated because I believed in that. And I was a lifetime member because of my philanthropic donations to that organization. And so that was part of who I was. And I was very outspoken about it. I wasn't mean or
confrontational.
Confrontational at all, but I enjoyed the debate. And I often would have a debate with anybody willing about the question of God and the existence of God and the afterlife. And I just believe that, we're only here for a short period of time and that we should make the most of it. That was my philosophy. And that's why I worked so hard. I wanted to leave a mark. I wanted to leave no pun intended. I wanted to leave a legacy. And so my business and my success in business was one of my things I was proud of, and I wanted to continue to make a difference, a positive difference in the world. That's what led to creating Nanorex, the nanotechnology software company, because I felt that was a key enabling technology for developing advanced nanosystems that could improve the human condition. And I really funded that business completely out of my back pocket with the money I made from my first business. But it was a pure research endeavor. It was not a regular business. There was no plan to make money. It was just something I was passionate about that I hoped might one day make a difference.
Well, and I'm going to jump in here because these statements coming from Tejbar are things that you don't have any way to relate to it. This wasn't part of your past. So talking about spirituality or an astral realm or any of this is something that is not in your dictionary.
No, it's completely foreign to me. I mean, these terms, the astral realm, you find this term in popular culture, in song, and in some other cultures like in the East. But I was not familiar with the term at all, other than, it's some mystical place that, we hear about in music and in story.
Now, Mark, let me jump in again. I have to do this. So this interview, was this verbal?
It was all telepathic.
It was telepathic
dialogue initially.
Okay.
So I would ask a question telepathically. I would get an answer telepathically.
And you're writing it down.
And I'm writing this down.
Okay.
And then as my interview continued, my questions became more complex and involved, and his answers were no longer telepathic dialogue. I started getting these downloads as answers to my questions. And the best analogy I have come up with is these downloads were like big plates of information, like food, that you have to consume one bite at a time. And when this first began, I was getting these huge downloads, and I would have to work at consuming and integrating the information. And each time I would take a bite of information, I would regurgitate to him. I would say, "Is this what you're telling me?" And he would say yes. And then I would take another bite and I say, "And is this true?" And he would say yes. And so that's how it would begin. And when he said yes, I would get a falling star in my vision. I was, as I was doing this, I would close my eyes and really focus on this download. And as I was integrating the information with each, proverbial bite, I was getting a falling star in my vision. And this became a mode of my learning that continued through that evening and into the morning. I didn't sleep. Like I said, I didn't sleep for the next 2 days.
Now, the retreat itself is over, right? Was it 6 days or was it longer?
It was 6 days, but this was the end of the 5th day. There was still one more day.
Did they miss you?
No, I attended.
Oh, you attended. You left the hotel room.
No, I didn't tell anybody. I did leave the hotel room when the sun began to come up. It wasn't yet coming up. It was still pretty dark out. And Tejbar wanted to go for a walk. And so it was cold out. This was November, and it was cold at night. So I had brought some layers of clothing, because we were out meditating in the nighttime as well. So we had to be clothed warmly. So I dressed up in warm clothes, and we went hiking out in the desert and watched the sun rise. And as we were walking, I continued my interview. And he was telling me all these amazing things about his experience after ascending. And I asked him things like, why did you choose me? And his answer, and this is verbatim, he said, "When the student is ready, the teacher will appear." Now, I was not a Buddhist. I did not study Buddhism because I was an atheist. I wasn't interested.
Right.
But when I had all my notes compiled, and in the years since, I started studying Buddhism a few years ago, and I came across this Buddhist quote that the Buddha said, according to the internet at least, and I of course recognized it immediately. This was something he had said when I asked him the question, and then he went on to tell me that because I was in good physical health, and at that time I had not been I wasn't a vegan, but I was limiting my protein intake to fish only and eggs and other plant forms of protein. And he told me that prepared me, that helped me to physically help me for this experience. That this he called it a communion. That's exactly what he said. He said the experience I was having was a communion, and that communion is a trinity. It's the unity or the coming together of three things. The celestial body, which he said he was a celestial being. The astral body, that was me. He had explained to me that each of us, a physical being, is comprised of two things. The physical body, which is a temporary suit. You can think of it as a suit that we wear temporarily. And in that suit is an energetic body, a subtle body that survives the physical death to continue to be, through reincarnation, to continue its development, its spiritual evolution and growth.
The stuff that must have been going through your mind because of this complete change of reality, it just must have been tremendous. And listening to you there, I now know why I've never made a direct contact, because my CE5 protocol is pastrami sandwiches and Dr. Pepper. Right? But I draw them in. They come in. Oh,
Yeah, well, according to him, in order to have a full-blown communion experience with a celestial being, you need to be in good physical health because it can bring on a heart attack. That's exactly what he told me. And
don't bum me out. Are you saying I have to remove pastrami?
You're going to have to remove the sugar and probably the red meat.
Oh man. Okay, I might. I might.
Well,
I love you, Mark. I love you, Mark. He's laughing and he's blushing at the same time. But this is the thing. I believe I have gone through a couple of CE5 moments, right, in the meditation, and I've got a loud voice, right? We all know that. We've all experienced that, and I'm like, I don't care about that. Let's have some fun with this. And I firmly believe that it's not necessarily the meditation, it's your intent. Right? I'm not a bad person. And laughing and being loud is still a good intention because I have seen remarkable things. And if we're laughing and playing Van Halen, that's not a bad thing, and I've seen the results of that. Now, I'm not saying that the true CE5 protocol doesn't. It does work, but I fell into it naturally, Mark. You know what I mean? I didn't go through a seminar. I wasn't told what to do. I stumbled into pulling in these crafts. Right?
Yeah, and I want to make a distinction here. I think there's a big difference between summoning craft through meditative practices or any other method that initiates that kind of contact. What I experienced was a communion, and that, according to Tejbar, and I just defer to him, I want to make it clear, this isn't my definition, this is what he taught me, is that this is where the celestial body merges with the physical body. And that is a very highly energetic process. I mean, I felt it. I can tell you for sure. It made sense to me when he said it can bring on a heart attack. I get that. It was it was shocking.
Right.
No pun intended.
Now, yeah, no pun intended. Okay, look, we have to go into overtime. Okay,
all right.
You're all good with that? Okay, because we're gonna come back to this. But tell me about the phone call to your mom. You had to call her. You had to get some advice.
Yeah.
What happened?
Oh man, I don't know if I. Well, you're talking about back then. I haven't talked about this on publicly, and I've even struggled writing about this in the book, but it is in the book I'm writing, the autobiography that I call Tejbar. And it was probably the most difficult part of my story to share publicly because my mother, when I returned back to Michigan after this retreat in California, the first 2 days, I did not say anything to my wife or anyone else. I kept this completely quiet, knowing that I was going to confide in my wife somehow. But the question is, how would I tell my wife what I was experiencing without her thinking I was crazy? And so I felt caught in this catch-22 that if I didn't tell her, she was going to see the behavioral changes that were obvious to everyone. I was acting differently, and I knew that. I was very aware of it because I'm in this state of communion, and I'm like, still in this mode of inquiry. I would, when I got home, for instance, the first thing I did was have supper with my wife. She prepared dinner when I was arriving back home from the airport. we had dinner together, and she could already tell as we were sitting at dinner that something was different with me. She didn't say anything until later. But I wanted just to kind of be alone and continue my interview of Tejbar, because what I was learning from him, both through my interview and through these experiences. For instance, one thing that happened while I was still in California is he effectively took me out of my body. And boy, is that a way to convince somebody that we're more than our physical body. And then he did a regression where I literally experienced a previous lifetime, and not just any lifetime, but a lifetime in which I was about to be executed. And I experienced the last few moments of a previous lifetime in which I was going to be executed, and I experienced the execution. And then I returned back to my hotel room, back into my body. That was quite an experience I had never had before. And so all these things were happening to me leading up to my return home. And of course, I'm integrating this, and I'm in this, state of wonder and recalibrating my worldview. And it's very disorienting, but it's also very exciting because I'm having these experiences that I've never had in my life before, and I'm learning things through Tejbar that are blowing my mind. And all I want to do is go back in my office and be alone and continue with these experiences and with this interview that I'm having, learning about the origin of our planet and who the ETs are and the cosmology of the universe, these realms of creation that he referred to, and the stages of our development, of conscious development, from simpler life forms to human stage consciousness, on to astral stages of consciousness, and then celestial stages of consciousness. He had been through all these major phases of conscious evolution, and according to him, I was in only the beginning of that process. We as humans, evidently, according to him, are in the fifth of a 15-stage process that he described to me.
Now, were you able to, I've got 30 seconds, was this a situation where you could go into your office, close the door, and you're engaged? He's always there.
Yes, absolutely. He was always there. And it was such a tactile, experience. It was so rich that it was like there was another person living inside of my body. I've always wondered as a kid, like how Siamese twins experience life. You're never alone. And that's what it was like with this being, Tejbar, inside of me. It was like he was always there. And of course, over this 13-day period that lasted, I was in this state of communion for 13 days, and then he left me. It was
Okay. Let's stop right there. Stop right there. Let's take a break. Let's get this commercial break in. Our guest tonight, Mark Sims, and wow, I haven't had these kinds of thoughts in a conversation happen in a very long time, Mark. And we're going to continue all of this when we come back. It's Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Stay with us. It's overtime next.
Here, and you are listening to my boy Jimmy Church on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter. But listening to Jimmy Church will.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I take Life Change Tea supplements every single day. It's what I do. Click on their banner at jimmychurchradio.com. This is Jimmy Church, and I invite you to attend the 20th Annual Los Angeles Conscious Life Expo live and in person this September 17th, 18th, and 19th at the LAX Airport Hilton. Connect with exhibitors, community, thought leaders, and friends as we begin to recreate the world. You can also watch the expo from the comfort of your own home. Live stream from the main stage in Los Angeles and from the main stage in London. Truly a global simulcast event broadcast around the world. Live stream and in-person expo tickets are available now. I'll be your host all weekend long from Los Angeles. And on Friday, it's my Ancient Secrets and Earth Mysteries themed segment with James Keenan, Caroline Corey, and William Henry. And on Saturday, Daniel Sheen and I sit down for a one-on-one interview live. We have an amazing lineup of 25 speakers, including Bashar, Gail Thackeray, Kimberly Meredith, Whitley Strieber, Stephen Bassett, Daniel Brinkley, and Lisa Garr. Please visit ConsciousLifeExpo.com for tickets and info. That's ConsciousLifeExpo.com and use that promo code Jimmy for a special discount. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roasted to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at jimmychurchradio.com and use the promo code F2B Blend for 15% off of your order today.
This is Billy Carson with ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. Forbidden Knowledge TV has just reached its 1-year anniversary. That's right, 1 year. And as a show of appreciation, we are giving all new subscribers a free 30-day trial of ForbiddenKnowledge.tv. That's 30 days to binge watch thousands of movies, documentaries, conferences, workshops, lectures, yoga classes, meditation courses, and so much more. So log on to ForbiddenKnowledge.tv from your computer or mobile device, or get the Forbidden Knowledge TV app on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon, iTunes, or Google Play today, and use coupon code 30daysfree. That's coupon code 30 days free on ForbiddenKnowledge.tv today.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JamieChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Mark Sims, going into overtime, and everybody saw this coming. This is not a surprise. During the break, Mark, I thought of two things. Two things popped into my head. Number one, at the end of every show, this happens. Jimmy, this was the best show ever. This was the best one yet. And already those posts are happening. And so there's that. And I thought about it, and then the post started coming in. So that thought popped in my head. And then this other thought popped in my head. I hope I didn't have a steak at our lunch. Did I eat Do you remember what I ate in front of you?
We ordered the ahi tuna. Remember?
Oh, that's right. That's okay. So it was safe zone. It was safe zone.
You're in the safe zone, buddy.
That's right. That's right. I was just picturing myself with a big ribeye. Okay. All right. And I'm sure you wouldn't have held that against me, but that's right. We did have, and that ahi was amazing, actually. It was.
Yeah,
okay.
It was absolutely delicious.
Okay. So, let's go back. We have way too much to compress in this last 20 minutes. So, let's see if we can rapid fire some of these questions. The first one that's on everybody's mind, this lasted for 13 days. So we'll get to day 13. But and we can cut right to the end. But how did your wife handle the conversation?
Not well. So I was struggling with how to break the news to her. And I knew that whatever I said, she would be very concerned and be worried about my stability. But I also felt it was critical to be honest. And what I had resorted to basically was to just tell her that I had a face-to-face contact in my hotel room with an extraterrestrial. But I, of course, would have nothing. I would say nothing about the communion, this merging, and that this being was still occupying my body.
Right.
That would be too much.
Not a good idea. No, not a good idea.
So I had reserved to that, but I still wanted time to break the news to her in the right place. So when I got back on the 19th of November. It was a Monday, and that was Thanksgiving week. And the night before Thanksgiving, I still had not told her. She wanted to go see a movie called The Silver Lining that was starring Jennifer Lawrence and Bradley
Cooper, right.
And the movie, if you've seen it, it's this wonderful movie about a guy who is released from a mental ward who suffers from bipolar disorder, and he meets this beautiful woman played by Jennifer Lawrence, and they become friends, and they learn ballroom dancing together and compete, and at the end they win a competition. And what I haven't told you about myself is I became an amateur champion ballroom dancer starting in 2009. I started dancing with my wife, and we really threw ourselves into it. And in 2011, I won my first championship. And so seeing this movie really touched me deeply. It was a very good movie, and I just could relate to it on many levels. And I was struggling, in the days leading up to watching this movie that Thanksgiving evening or Thanksgiving Eve, I was struggling with how to tell my wife. And so I was really stressed out about that. And so we went to see this movie, and I was so emotionally moved by the movie that I didn't cry until we went out into our car. And because of the stress and the emotional buildup of the movie and the emotional stress I was under, trying to figure out how to break this news to my wife, I let loose in the car. I became a fountain of tears. And I was crying so violently that I could not catch my breath, and this was freaking out my wife.
Yeah, she's like, the movie wasn't wasn't that good, right?
And so she keeps asking me what's going on. Why am I crying like this? And finally, after I calm down, and as I'm trying to calm myself down, I'm racing. This is not the way I imagined breaking the news to my wife that I had met an extraterrestrial. And I didn't want to say it there in the car after seeing this movie. So I tried very feebly to blame it on the film, that I was just deeply moved. And she said, there's no way. You've never reacted this way to a movie. I'm not buying it. Right. She says, what's really going on?
Right.
And then I took a long pause and I told her, there's something that happened back in California. In the privacy of my hotel room, I had a face-to-face encounter with an extraterrestrial. And she looked at me like I was an alien. And she said to me, Mark, I am very, very concerned about your mental health. And she said, I've been observing you the last few days since you've been coming home, and something's different about you. And I insist that you have a physical and a psychiatric evaluation. And that was a very logical, rational thing for her to think.
You can't argue with that, right?
Right. And I said, I will. I agreed. I knew that I was behaving differently and that this was cause for alarm, but I also knew the cause of it and the reason why I was reacting this way. And but there was no way for her to understand that. So I felt it was very important to put her at ease immediately, because I cared about her feelings, and she was genuinely worried about me. And she even said that she had, while I was gone in California, had done a lot of research on Greer and found some things that were very concerning to her, that he was considered a cult leader by people, and she was convinced that I had been drugged. And I told her, I said, I don't think I was drugged. I never consumed anything that he or anyone else gave me. And so I don't think that's it. And I told her, I said, we saw this ship appear hours before this encounter in my hotel room. It appeared above our group in the desert, and I wasn't the only one who saw it. And she says, well, you were all drugged. And I said, no, we weren't. I know we weren't. We all saw the same thing. So we got into this debate about whether we had all been drugged and seen the ship as a consequence of being, intoxicated or hallucinating, which I knew was not the case. And so we got this. This actually led to a little bit of an argument in the car, and we started driving home. And on the way, I just said, well, can you just hear what I have to share, and what happened to me when I made contact with this being? And she says, you can tell the doctors. So I'll make an appointment for us to go in, and you can get a physical and a psychiatric evaluation. I don't want to hear it until you tell the doctors. And I agreed to that. So we were quiet all the way home, and then the next day was actually Thanksgiving Day, 2012. I'll never forget that day. It was the day that changed my life in very many ways. And that was the day that I called my mother. You asked me about my first phone call to my mother. And what had happened is that neither my wife or I slept that night. We were very upset. And when she got up early that morning and took a shower, I needed to use the restroom, and so I went into the bathroom as she was coming out of the shower, and I told her that I was really upset with her, that she was not giving me an opportunity to tell my story, even though I knew she wasn't necessarily going to believe me. I just wanted the opportunity for her to hear me and for me to explain what I had experienced back in California. And I still wasn't going to I wasn't planning on telling her that this being merged with me, but I at least wanted to share with her the experience of what led up to him showing up in my hotel room, and then what I learned from him in our communication during the communion. And because there were some things in that I felt were, for me anyway, very compelling and interesting, and maybe would open her up to further discussions. So anyway, she just completely shut that down when we got home, and that left a bad energy as we were getting ready for bed, and we were really mad at each other. I mean, it was, we weren't yelling yet, but it was, I was brooding in bed, and just imagining if our roles had been switched, I would at least let her tell me the story. If she wanted to share something with me, I wouldn't necessarily believe her, but I would hear her out. And she didn't give me that opportunity, and I felt that was a real betrayal of our marriage. I really felt that strongly.
You can answer this very, very quickly and briefly. Was your lifestyle affluent? Were you in a neighbor, the social setting and her friends and careers and appearance of the family unit? You know what I mean?
Yeah. We lived in a very large home. It was a 13,000 square foot home with a bowling alley, with a big pool and cabana house. We lived on a lake. It was just a gorgeous house that we designed with an architect and built. It took us 4 years to build the house, so we were affluent, and we were real pillars of our community. We were very philanthropic. My wife and I started a foundation and began giving money to the hospital in Ann Arbor, for instance, and the Detroit Institute of Arts was one of our favorite
DIA. I love DIA.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Man. That was the first time I saw like all of Van Gogh's paintings in one place. I was there for that. And talk about a life-changing thing. I love DIA. Anyway, okay, so let's get back to this. So that's the atmosphere that all of this is going down. Certainly she is thinking about her life too as well, and what this this whole thing could mean.
Well, I it's hard for me to
you're supposed to be
what she was thinking, other than she was just absolutely 100% convinced that I had been drugged.
Right.
And that I was hallucinating, and she was very concerned about my physical well-being and my mental well-being.
Sure.
And I can relate to that. I can understand that. And that is, at the end of the day, a very loving response to the situation.
No doubt.
And looking back on it, I'm very, I know she was acting out of love for me and concern. But what ended up happening is it became kind of a perfect storm situation, because that morning when I walked into the bathroom and confronted her, and I said, had our roles been switched, I would have dealt with it very differently. I'm really disappointed in the way that you, I said I was very angry. I didn't say I was disappointed. I said, I'm very angry with you for shutting me down and not at least letting me tell my story. And that led to a argument in which we were screaming at each other at the top of our lungs, to the point where it became almost humorous. I mean, it was like, when I realized that it was just, it couldn't go and get any more intense. Our faces were both beat red, and I just stopped. And she continued yelling, and wow. So I'm going to stop it there. I write about this in the book. I'll just get very emotional. But that resulted ultimately with me leaving the bathroom, and I go into my bedroom or into my office, and my wife then called my mother. And my mother, who at the time was an academic psychologist a professor teaching at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, Arizona. And I happened to walk back into the bedroom later that morning when she's on the phone with my mother. And I was very angry that my wife had called my mother. So I called my mother, and I told her I'd like to come to meet her and my father face to face and tell my story. So they agreed, and so on the day after Thanksgiving, I flew from Detroit to Phoenix and drove up to Flagstaff, and I spent 2 days with my parents explaining telling them everything, telling them exactly what I just shared with your audience, and that this being Tejbar was still in my body at that time, and I was letting them know this, and that he was telling me things to share with them. And we were having dinner that first night that I arrived, and as we were having dinner, I said, Tejbar wants me to share this with you. And I began telling them what Tejbar wanted me to share with them.
The intensity of the previous 10 days, right? From the beginning of this all the way through Thanksgiving. Now you're discussing this with your parents. I don't know how you emotionally, got through it without maybe a total breakdown. Were you okay?
I was okay. Now, one thing I haven't talked about yet is that on Thanksgiving Day, I basically told my wife I wanted a divorce. That's what happened in the bathroom. And so I left that bathroom telling her our marriage had ended. And
wow.
And I went into my office to contemplate my next, move, my plans of moving out. And I was absolutely committed to this decision of separating and filing for divorce ultimately, which I ended up doing. But that night, we were having Thanksgiving dinner at our niece's house. My wife's niece had invited us over for Thanksgiving, and my daughter, who had just graduated from college, was now living in Ann Arbor, and she was taking a gap year between medical school. She decided to go into medical school and took a year break and worked at the University of Michigan in the stem cell research lab with a woman named Ava Feldman, who's one of the world experts on stem cell research. So my daughter was living in Ann Arbor and came to stay with us during Thanksgiving, and we were all going to leave to go to our Thanksgiving dinner at our niece's house, and I did not want to go. I told my wife after I came back later in the afternoon, I said, listen, I'm not going to Thanksgiving dinner. I'm not feeling up to it, and I think you and Erica, our daughter, should go, and then I'll eat alone. So later that night, when my wife and my daughter, and we also happened to have my in-laws who are staying with us from Indiana, were also in the house. They all four left in the early afternoon, around 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock roughly. They left to go to Thanksgiving dinner with relatives. I was home alone. And I sent an email to everyone I had met in California at the retreat, the CE5 retreat. And I wrote an email to all of them except Greer, telling them about Tejbar for the first time, that I had this face-to-face contact with Tejbar and that he had merged with my body and he was still within me. And when I was getting ready to hit the send button to that email, Tejbar stopped me. He warned me. He said, if you send this email, it may put you in physical harm. May place you in physical harm. And I'm like, what? That does, why? And I was, he just said that something to the extent that your email will be monitored and that they'll know by the description of what you wrote who and what I am, and that will be a threat to somebody. And I just found it so outlandish. I didn't take it seriously. I hit the send button impulsively, and right after I hit the send button, I started sweating. And I wasn't nervous, but it was Tejbar, who was having some kind of psychosomatic reaction within my body, causing me to profusely sweat under my armpits. It was like a water fountain under my arms. And I took notice of this, and then I checked in with Tejbar, and I said, Tejbar, what's going on? And he says, Mark, you're in physical danger. You need to be extremely careful. So I lived in this gated community where we built this house I described with the bowling alley and the pool. And there was a guardhouse, and anybody coming into the gated community had to get checked in by the guard. So I immediately called the guard and told them that I wasn't expecting any guest and to please be extra careful letting anybody through the gatehouse, that only the people who are on a list that we maintain, who are known friends and family, are allowed to come through. Anybody else asking to come to see me, please make sure you call me first. I made this a big point of this, and this phone call was made at roughly 3 p.m. in the afternoon, because after all that went down, I recorded all my logs from my phone. So I talked to the guard, and he made a note of it. He was very clear. Yes, Mr. Sims, I'll be sure to not let anybody through. And I said, it's probably nothing. I'm just a little concerned. A friend of mine called me and said maybe I'd be in physical harm, so please be extra careful who you let through. So my wife left with the family, and I was home alone, and at 7 o'clock, I got hungry, and I went upstairs to make myself dinner. And as I had just placed the fish and some vegetables I'd cut up to roast in the oven, my phone rings. My landline in my house rings, and I answer it, and it's the guard that I had spoken to just 4 hours earlier. He's still on duty working, and this is Thanksgiving Day. And he says, Mr. Sims, this is Rudy. His name was Rudy. And he says, this is Rudy. I just wanted to let you know that Audrey Sims is on her way to see you. And I said, Rudy, who's Audrey Sims? And he started stuttering. He was going, don't you know an Audrey Sims? And I said, no, I do not. Who is she? And he says, well, I don't know, Mr. Sims, but she's on her way. And I said, well, is she alone? And he says, no, she's with 2 men. And I said, what kind of car are they driving? And he says, a black SUV. Yeah. And I said, Rudy, call 911. I'm in trouble. And I hang up, and I know that I've got a very short amount of time to go hide out in my home. I have this huge 13,000 square foot home, lots of hiding places, but I don't have a gun or any weapons. But I did happen to have hanging in my office a tomahawk, this very, very big, heavy tomahawk. And I pulled it off the wall, and I went and hid in my garage. And the reason I hid into my garage is because from that vantage point, I could see anybody entering my driveway. And I would figure it would be one of the last places anybody would be looking for me in the house. So I just sat in there, and as soon as I got into the garage and was looking out the window, and mind you, at 7 p.m. at night in November in Michigan, it's very dark. It was pitch black. And so I was in this pitch black garage looking out the window, and here comes a black SUV down the street and turns into my driveway. And I started shaking like a leaf. I was so scared because I knew this was not good. So I ran to the back of the garage to get away from the window because I wanted to call Rudy, the guard, to make sure he had called 911. And I wanted to go in the corner of the garage so that the illumination of my phone wouldn't give me away.
Okay, let me stop you. Let me stop you right there. I'm letting the network know, Race, and everybody else. I'm not signing off at 10 p.m. We are going to continue. If you want to keep us on the air, don't run commercials. I won't run commercials from here. Okay, back to you, Mark. So the SUV is coming up the driveway.
And when it turns into my driveway, it goes right past the window where I'm hiding out. And so I run into the back of the garage, back away from the window, to make my phone call to the guard. And when I call him, I say, he answers the phone. And I said, did you call 911? And he said, no, Mr. Sims, I can't get an outside line. And I said, what do you mean you can't get an outside line? I'm talking to you on your landline. And he says, I know, Mr. Sims, but when I pick up my phone and I try to make a phone call, it doesn't go through. And I said, do you have a cell phone? He says, yes, I have a cell phone. I said, call 911 on your cell phone. And I hang up with him, and then I call 911. And the 911 operator in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, on that night of Thanksgiving gets two simultaneous 911 calls, one from the guardhouse and one from me, both telling them that I'm in trouble. And so, the 911 operator wants to ask me 100 questions about the nature of the threat. And so I'm answering all these questions about where I'm located in the house and what my address is and what's the nature of my emergency and all this stuff. And I'm not looking out the window while this is going on because I'm on my phone and I'm in the dark and I don't want to be near the window. So while this long conversation is going on my cell phone, I am beginning to become worried that I am distracted, and whoever's in that black SUV may be entering my house and starting to search through the house looking for me, and I want to be on alert and listen, and I want to be quiet. And so I tell the 911 operator I have to hang up, and I hang up on her. So I go to the window and I look out the window and I don't see a car. I don't see this black SUV. But the angle of my window is such that the car could be in right at the entrance of my front door and I couldn't see it because of the angle of the window.
Sure.
And so I'm not sure. So I just sit there listening carefully. I don't hear anything. And then my phone rings. And it rings loud because I had the ringer on, and I'm fumbling for it. I drop the phone because I'm shaking like a leaf. I drop it on the ground, I pick it up, and I answer it, and it's the 911 operator calling me back saying, Mark, Mr. Sims, we have to ask you more questions about the nature of your emergency. And I said, are the police on their way? And she said, yes, the police are on their way. And I said, good. And I hung up on her, and I took the ringer off my phone, and I continued looking out the window, and I didn't see anything, and I was waiting for the police to show up. And after about 5 or 6, 7 minutes, I started hearing somebody walking out in the driveway. I couldn't see them, but I could hear them. And I heard footsteps all around, and then I heard the doorbell. So in my house, I've got a doorbell system that rings on a speakers that includes the speakers in my garage. So when I hear that, I figure, you know what? I am going to just go outside and assume if it's the bad guys, the police are going to be showing up any second and I'll be okay, or it's the police. So I walk out and I have the tomahawk in my hand. And I walk out of the side door of my garage into the driveway, and a policeman draws a gun and rushes up to me, and he says, who are you? And I said, I'm the homeowner. I'm Mark Sims, the homeowner. And he says, what's in your hand? And I said, a tomahawk. And he said, put the tomahawk down slowly on the ground and put your hands behind your head. So I put the tomahawk on the ground very slowly. I put my hands behind my head. He comes up to me. He pats me down and he says, you're Mr. Sims? And I said, yes. He holsters his pistol, and now 2 other cops are surrounding me, and he says, what is going on here? What is going on? And I said, I'd like to tell you, officer, but you're not going to believe me. And he says, you have to tell me. He says, I have a squad of policemen surrounding your house. Their guns are drawn. They're on high alert, and we don't know what we're dealing with here. And I don't want somebody to get hurt. And so you're going to tell me, I mean, he was in my face and really, really aggressive. He says, you are going to tell me what the hell's going on here. Is this a drug situation? Do you have guns on the property? I said, there's no guns here. There's no drugs. But I would rather have a lawyer present. And he says, you're going to tell, there's no lawyer here. You're going to tell me. And so I said, okay, I'm going to tell you, but you're not going to believe me. And so I go on to tell my story about having been at this Greer 6-day retreat and having seen this craft. And then in my hotel room, I summon an extraterrestrial who then enters. No, I don't say he entered my body. I just said I had a face-to-face contact in my hotel room with an extraterrestrial. So this is the story I'd planned to tell my wife. And so I tell it to the cop. And he says, and these other cops are listening to this story, and they're asking me like, well, what did this ET look like? And I said, well, he looked human. He looked Latino. You know, I'm thinking, you know, South American. You know, he's from Borrego, from Tierra del Fuego. So I'm thinking he's Argentinian. And this police officer who asked me the question was Latino, and I said he kind of looked like you. And it was a complete fabrication, of course, but I was just trying to bring some levity to the situation, and it worked because he kind of smiled a little bit, and then they just continued asking me questions about what was going on here, and I just said, listen, this extraterrestrial told me that if I sent an email that I had drafted earlier this afternoon, that I would be putting myself in harm's way. And when I sent the email anyway, I discovered that indeed I may be in harm's way, and I called the guardhouse and I warned them not to let anybody through, and they let somebody through that wasn't on the list. And he says, yeah, we talked to the guard, he confirms your story, and but you know, I don't, you know, what's going on here? And I said, I don't know who they were. I just know that they weren't invited, and I'm really frightened by it. And right when I'm into this part of the story, my wife and my daughter and my in-laws drive into the driveway. Now, mind you, that there are cops surrounding my house still who have not been hearing this story that I'm relaying to the officer and these 2 other officers. Right. There's an officer in the street. And when my wife's car pulls into the driveway, he rushes up to the car with his pistol and points it into the window. And my daughter is driving the car, and and the officer who's in charge, the lead deputy, who's interviewing me, looks at the situation, and he just grabs his head and he says, "Is this your family?" And I said, "Yes, it's my family returning from Thanksgiving dinner." And he says, "You stay here. I'm going to go talk to them." So he goes and talks to them, and about 15 minutes later, he comes back to me, and he says, "Your wife tells me that you have agreed to go see a doctor and that you're going to get a full psychiatric evaluation." And I said, "Yes, I plan on doing that." He said, "Good. I think that's a very good idea." So my wife then walks into the house. We all go into the house. The officer tells the deputies to go with me to search the house for any possible intruders, which we do, which takes a long time in a 13,000-foot square house. It took us about 45 minutes to search every closet, every part of the house. And of course, these officers are impressed by my bowling alley and, everything else. And, asking me what I did for a living, so this became kind of a tour of my house. And finally, when we were done, we came back into the kitchen, and my wife is talking to the lead detective, and he basically says to me, please, follow your wife's instructions, go to see that doctor, and he leaves. And he's troubled with how to classify the report, because he has to file a report. So anyway,
what happened to the black SUV?
The black SUV was not there. It had left evidently when I went to call 911.
Did Rudy? What about license plates? And did Rudy? Was there any videotape?
Well, the officer. I told the officer that there was video and that he should check with the guard to recover the video. But unfortunately, the officer did not follow through on that the next day, because we would have had video, but over 24 hours, it
loops over.
Video overwrites itself.
Right.
And by the time I had found this out, there was no chance of recovering that video. And the gate to go out of the gated community will open automatically. You don't have to check in with a guard to leave. You just pull up to the gate and the arm lifts and you leave. So that was how they left.
Did Rudy see them leave?
No, he did not.
Right. Okay.
Leave.
Okay.
And so I ended up, Rudy, by the way, ended up getting fired from his job the next day for breaching the protocol, because he broke the rules. I mean, these guys are hired, and he was one of the first security guards that the gated community had hired. And I had known him for many years. I'd lived there by that time. This is 2012, and we moved in there in 2004. So he had been the senior guard there for 8 years.
Right, right.
And he lost his job the next day. He was fired because of the brouhaha that's generated. I mean, it was a major deal. And so anyway, I never got a chance to interview him until years later. I was able to track him down, and I interviewed him, and I videotaped him in an interview, which I have on my Vimeo account. And we recall that whole story, and he tells his point of view, what had happened, and he confirms all these things I'm sharing with you, at least from his perspective, that I indeed called in the afternoon warning him, and then he let the car through. And he claims that this woman, her name was Audrey Sims, was sitting in the back seat of the SUV, which was being driven by a man, and there was somebody in the passenger seat that was a man, and that she had cracked the window open a few inches. She couldn't identify her. She just basically saw a black silhouette and heard her voice. But the reason he had let her through is because she had gone through before, and he thought she was on the list, which she hadn't. But she had been coming evidently to my house before a few times, and he had let her through because. Well, however that originated, I don't know. He couldn't explain it. So it was very, very strange, to say the least.
That's an incredible story. Go ahead and finish your thought.
So anyway, that's my Men in Black encounter, which happened the evening of Thanksgiving Day, 2012, as I'm still in the state of communion with Tejbar. And so I now, years later, reflecting on what was transpiring, I can understand now the threat that Tejbar represented to this these dark beings, you could call them.
Now, and thank you for staying late. I have never gone this late on the show. But I want to get to the ending of this, which is 13 days later, you and Tejbar say goodbye. How does that happen?
Well, when I returned back from Flagstaff, my parents decided to fly back with me because they were all very concerned about my mental state. And so my wife and my mother had been secretly communicating without my knowledge, and my mother had basically diagnosed me as bipolar. And my wife had contacted the University of Michigan Hospital, and because we had been significant donors, we were able to get she was able, I should say, to get a quick appointment with doctors there. And so as soon as I returned from Flagstaff, which was the 25th of November, on the 26th, my wife had already made an appointment for the hospital in Ann Arbor for me to have a full physical and psychiatric evaluation. So Monday morning, the 26th of November, my wife and my daughter drove me to Ann Arbor from Bloomfield Hills. And when I had the physical examination in the morning, all the results were confirming that I was a specimen of health. I mean, I was in very good shape. I was exercising and eating regularly, healthy foods. And so there was nothing indicating that I had a brain tumor or any other health problem. But then in the afternoon and evening, it ended up late into the evening that three psychiatrists evaluated me, and they began with an interview of my daughter and my wife, and then I went in for an interview. And at the end of that interview, we were brought into a room together with a big security guard, and I was informed that I would not be returning home that evening, that I was being involuntarily committed for my own safety. And I asked them, I said, well, I am going home. I'm not staying here. They said, no, in the state of Michigan, a psychiatrist who deems you a possible harm to yourself and others can involuntarily commit you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I said, well, I want to call my lawyer right now. And they said, you do not have a right to a lawyer. And this is true. This is true in Michigan, that if a psychiatrist deems you a security risk or a health risk as a violent person who's either suicidal or going to harm other people physically, they can commit you, and you don't even have a right to a lawyer. And I had not been violent. I had not been in any way suicidal. I was actually telling my story to the psychiatrist in a very, matter-of-fact way. I mean, it wasn't helping my case any, but I, at one point said, he's right here. Would you like to ask him a question? And, because he was blowing my mind with these amazing pearls of wisdom and philosophy and the nature of reality and consciousness. And I thought maybe that they would dig it, but that was very naive of me, of course, and it resulted in my being institutionalized. And so the 26th of November, that was the day I was committed. And this is now the 11th day of my communion experience. So the last 2-3 days of my communion took place in the mental ward of the University of Michigan Hospital. And he left me at 3 a.m. on the morning of the 29th of November.
And how did you guys say goodbye? How did that happen?
Well, I was asleep, and I had this lucid dream. It was a very, very, it was almost like I was awake. And the dream began with me following this man who was wearing nothing but a cloth around his waist, in India, these people who wear a white cloth around their waist, it almost looks like a diaper. So there was this man who was bald, but had a ring of hair around his head like Patrick Stewart, He was an older man. He had a torch in his hand. And I was following him down this corridor, and we came to this fork in the corridor, like a dead end, but that with one way going to the right and one way going to the left. And we took the left turn, and we continued down this corridor. And this corridor is the walls are made up of these very large blocks, like the blocks at the Great Pyramid, if you've ever been in Giza. And so there are these huge limestone blocks. And I'm just following this guy, and we're not saying anything to each other. And then we end up, this corridor ends and opens up in the large chamber room. And on the other side of this large room, there is an elevated floor or stage with these 2 steps leading up to that stage. And on the stage, or on that elevated floor, is a small altar made of 3 stones. One that's horizontal, and 2 vertical that the horizontal stone is resting on. Very primitive, basic altar. So I follow him up the steps to the altar, and he puts the torch on the altar, and then he lays down on the ground in front of the altar, closes his eyes, and he begins what I think is moaning. He begins doing this like a gnome sound. But he had this expression on his face like he was in pain, but now I know it wasn't pain. What he was doing was hewing. I do this meditation I call the hew. And I didn't understand that until about a year later when I joined Eckankar at the behest of Tejbar. He encouraged me to join Eckankar in 2013. And but the Eckists, as they call themselves, do a spiritual practice in which they meditate and they sing a note they call the hew. And that's what he was doing. And as he's laying on the ground hewing with his eyes closed, my abdomen begins vibrating as I'm asleep. And this vibration begins to expand all the way to the tip of my head and down to the tip of my toes. And a crescendo is reached where my whole body is vibrating. And I suddenly wake up and I shout. I go, "Yah!" really loud. And when I wake up after yelling "Yah," I realize that Tejbar is gone. There's this void in my body, that once was occupied by Tejbar. And in the room, in my room in the psych ward of the University of Michigan Hospital, above the door there is a large LED clock, a red clock. And I look at the clock, and it is exactly 3 a.m. I'll never forget that. And so I'm awake, and I'm kind of, taking check of my body, and I recognize that this feeling, that this experience that I had been having for 13 days was now much different. There was almost a feeling of loss. And I recognized that he was no longer with me. And so that was the end of my 13 days.
That's incredible. I mean, all of it is incredible. And I cannot wait for the next time that you're on the show. I just can't wait. And there's so much follow up here. When we've been on the air now for 3.5 hours, so all of this will continue. There's just so much more to discuss. But Mark, I want to tell you, you've got the brightest eyes, the biggest smile, the most positive thing that goes on about you that everybody comments on, and I do, and I joke about it because you glow. And I think we all just achieved a clearer understanding about you, Mark Sims. And we are going to be doing this big event. We just did all of this show, and we didn't talk about Making Contact. So, Making Contact is August 18th through the 22nd. We're going to be doing this virtual event. And when I say virtual, it's literally virtual, but it's not, right? That's the other thing. But I want to end with this. You also have the ability to network. And who you have speaking at this conference it's absolutely amazing. And how are you able to pull in like Eric Weinstein, right? Christopher Mellon, this array of great minds?
Well, to put it bluntly and succinctly, I am working with some angels, earth angels, one of them being Daniel Sheehan.
Yes.
Who is one of the most remarkable human beings that's ever existed on this planet. And he is my mentor, he is my role model, and I am so blessed to call him a dear friend. I love him as I love a father. And he has had a lot to do with it, but there's also other, what I would call angels involved here. I believe that this is being orchestrated at a higher level. In fact, I'm most certain of it, and I think others that are close to me that are working with me, and I think Danny would agree, that there seems to be a higher power that has, pulled together a team who want to make the world a better place and see that the time has come for a type of an awakening, and that the human family is now at the cusp of the dawning of a new era. And that era is making contact with our star family. It's just that simple, that ETs are here. They've always been here. They've been aloof and reclusive, to be sure, but the mystery of why they've been so aloof is about to be revealed. And the story of our history, the planet, of the human being and its evolution on this planet, and of our intimate relationship and connection with these extraterrestrials, be they physical beings from other star systems that are technically and intellectually far more advanced than we humans, or higher dimensional beings that we cannot physically see with our eyes, but are nonetheless very, very much a part of our daily existence, are about to show themselves to us. And all we need to do is simply come together in a spirit of unity and of peace and of harmony and love, and make a call to them to reach out, and they will respond. They will take our call. And that's what this is about. This is a major historic event that will be looked back, hundreds, thousands of years ago, that this may be one of those moments in human history where it all began.
Right.
And that will be the Making Contact convergence. So if anybody's listening and wants to be a part of it, that is going to take place on a virtual 3D platform. It's kind of like Second Life, but not quite as realistic or as sophisticated as real life, but it's a virtual conference center. It's a campus where you can create an avatar and attend presentations by these remarkable people who will be lecturing, and we will be discussing the philosophical, the theological, the psychological, cultural, and political implications of making contact with off-world intelligences.
Mark Sims, thank you so much, my friend. And I look forward to our phone call tomorrow. It's going to be a great one.
It sure is. All right. Thank you so much, Jimmy.
You're the best. Thank you so much, Mark, and thank you for the conversation tonight. And again, everybody, it's makingcontact.com. Mark gave us a promo code for all of you Fadernauts. It's JimmySave100. Is it all uppercase?
It's all uppercase, no spaces, just JimmySave100. The standard price for the ticket is $249. You'll save $100. So for $149, you can participate in a historic event. We are limiting this to 2,000 ticket holders. And so please, go grab them while you can, because you will be participating in something that will go down in the annals of history as one of those moments in history that it all began. And we have, Whitley Strieber is going to be there, Marshall Summers, Linda Moulton Howe, Ray Hernandez, Barbara Lamb, of course, Danny Sheehan, Ralph Blumenthal. Is going to be there. He's the New York Times journalist who broke the story in 2017 about the videos from the Navy fighter planes.
That's right. Ralph Blumenthal, Richard Dolan, Christopher Mellon, Lou Elizondo, Eric Weinstein. It's going to be an extraordinary event. And thank you. I'm very humbled by your invitation to this. And here we are. It's going to kick off on August 18th. Thank you so much, Mark. All the best. And again, I can't wait for our phone call tomorrow. Get some rest. I'll talk to you.
Yeah, bye-bye.
What a great night here on Fade to Black. It's going to be historic on August 18th. I think it was historic tonight. Mark Sims. Again, marksims.com and makingcontact.com. And I'm going to get straight to the credits. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Kevin. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vitoa, Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and syndication is KGRA, The Planet. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2021 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black of the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tomorrow night, right here, Peter Robbins. I want to thank Mark Sims. Until tomorrow night, I want everybody to be safe. It's time to fade to black.